Inside the halls of Xenyan Sect, the atmosphere was heavy and final. An elder, his voice echoing through the chamber, stood with authority as he pronounced judgment. Yi Chen, an outer disciple, had suffered the rupture of his dantian, an affliction that stripped him of the ability to cultivate. For this, the elder declared him expelled. From that moment forward, Yi Chen was forbidden from ever setting foot upon the mountains of Xenyan Sect, not even by a single step. Yi Chen attempted to defend himself, insisting that the sect bore responsibility for his condition. But the elder cut him off coldly, branding him a piece of trash who dared to make excuses despite his worthlessness. Yi Chen struggled to accept this. After everything he had done for the sect, is this how he was going to be treated? 3 days earlier, Yi Chen had been seen darting through a dense forest, moving swiftly from branch to branch with a box clutched tightly in his grasp. A sharp object flew past, narrowly grazing his cheek. He halted immediately and shouted into the woods. From the shadows, a figure emerged, wearing a smile that did not reach his eyes, Luji from Xenyan Sect. With a casual air, Luji dismissed any pretense of secrecy. He demanded the elixir, warning that if Yi Chen handed it over, there might still be a chance for his pathetic life to be spared. Yi Chen unsheathed his sword and swung it with force toward his opponent, refusing to yield. But the moment his blade cut through the air, Lu Zhai was no longer in sight. A silhouette flickered behind him. Before Yi Chen could fully react, a fan swept toward his neck. He twisted in time to lessen the blow, but a sharp sting marked a shallow wound. Lu Zhai's speed left little room for error, and the next strike could be fatal. Without pause, Lu Zhai launched into a rapid barrage of palm strikes. Each hit landed cleanly, forcing Yi Chen backward through sheer force. He dug his sword into the ground to stop himself, dragging a line through the earth before regaining his footing. Though battered, Yi Chen remained upright. The blows had left bruises and scrapes, but his internal organs remained untouched. It was clear his opponent had full control over the fight and was deliberately holding back. Yi Chen lashed out with his sword again and again, yet Lu Zhai evaded each strike with ease. With a casual motion, Lu Zhai swept his hand toward the blade, deflecting it. The impact tore the weapon from Yi Chen's grasp and sent it flying. No longer amused, Lu Zhai began to gather his strength. His kai surged, coiling around him before rushing toward Yi Chen. A concentrated finger strike followed, aimed directly at the abdomen. The force shattered Yi Chen's dantian on impact, sending blood from his mouth as pain surged through his body. Powerless and fading, Yi Chen collapsed. The battle had never been a challenge for Lu Zhai, he had merely toyed with him. As Yi Chen's vision dimmed, he saw Lu Zhai retrieve the box containing the elixir. The world around him faded as his eyes closed. Back in the present, the elder addressed Yi Chen, stating that the sect had nursed him back to health over the past 3 days. According to the elder, that act alone was more than sufficient repayment. Yi Chen referred to the man as Elder Wu and spoke of having grown up within the sect since childhood. Yet the coldness he now faced revealed the true depth of the elder's disregard. Turning his back, Yi Chen declared that from that day forward, he no longer belonged to Xenyan Sect. As he descended the long staircase from the hall, whispers rose among the surrounding disciples. Murmurs spread, branding him as trash and useless. They understood what had happened. Yi Chen had been cast out. Some disciples watched in silence, conflicted. A few considered seeing him off out of respect, but others dismissed the idea, arguing that he was no longer a cultivator and thus no longer one of them. Among the crowd, Zhao Kang stepped forward, a sneer forming as he spotted him. With a mocking tone, he loudly called out, drawing attention to Yi Chen's presence. Yi Chen recognized him but continued walking without pause. Zhao Kang mocked him further, stepping closer with feigned concern and exaggerated pity. Then, with a sudden movement, Zhao Kang grabbed Yi Chen's shoulder, pulling close and jeering at him not to leave so easily. When Yi Chen responded with clear rejection, Zhao Kang's expression twisted into open contempt. He belittled Yi Chen, taunting him with the weight of his lost status. Spreading his legs, Zhao Kang blocked the path and shouted his demand. If Yi Chen wished to leave, he should crawl through his legs. He promised a reward of spirit stones, but the offer was clearly made to humiliate. Zhao Kang laughed and Yi Chen could only look at him in contempt. Onlookers murmured uneasily, one disciple voicing that perhaps Zhao Kang had gone too far. But Zhao Kang turned sharply, silencing them with a threat, and no one dared to challenge him further. Before Yi Chen could respond, movement behind him caught Zhao Kang's eye. A girl was approaching, Jai Ning Shuang. Her appearance drew the attention of the disciples, who quickly spread word of her presence. She was striking, her slender frame and expressive eyes drawing stares from all directions. Zhao Kang's demeanor shifted instantly. Gone was the cruelty, replaced by a performative grace. He moved toward Ning Shuang, attempting to present himself as someone of status. But she walked past him without hesitation, her gaze cold and disinterested. She stopped only when she reached Yi Chen. In silence, she looked at him. Yi Chen didn't speak. As she continued walking, she offered him a quiet word of farewell. Yi Chen took note of her expression as he passed her by. He remarked to himself that she had changed. She remained silent, her face unreadable. Before departing, Yi Chen spoke once more, wishing her well. He then left the sect grounds, carrying a small bundle, and entered the forest. Night fell. Beneath the moonlight, Yi Chen paused in the woods, alone with his thoughts. His eyes lifted to the sky as memories surfaced, moments spent in the sect. He remembered a time when Elder Wu had gently lifted him as a child, and the laughter of disciples who had once vied for the same affection. That warmth was now distant. His face darkened with sorrow, and as he stared at the moon, wondering what a home truly means, a sudden streak of light flashed across the sky, then another, and a third. Yi Chen's eyes followed their descent. Without hesitation, he moved swiftly in their direction, eager to witness their landing. A loud explosion rang out in the forest ahead. Light burst across the sky, and Yi Chen shielded his face. When it dimmed, he pushed through the brush to get a clearer view. Ahead, smoke rose from a patch of scorched earth. He stepped closer, eyes fixed on the glow. Deep within the forest, a golden flame burned steadily atop the scorched earth. Drawn by its glow, Yi Chen stepped forward. As he reached out, he felt an uncanny sense of kinship with the flame, both of them displaced, without a home. The flame rose gently from a cluster of scattered stones and floated toward him, settling upon his outstretched hand. Yi Chen studied it closely, impressed by its presence. He raised his other hand above it, and the flame responded, drifting upward and merging into his fingertip. A sensation stirred within him. Deep inside his body, the broken dantian began to shift. Where once it was shattered and lifeless, a swirling vortex of light took shape, forming a smooth, circular surface resembling water. For a brief moment, Yi Chen exhaled in astonishment. The impossible had occurred, his dantian had healed. But that moment was short-lived. A sudden sharp pain surged through him as beams of light impaled the newly formed core. He doubled over, clutching his abdomen as the force racked his body. When he opened his eyes again, their glow reflected the transformation occurring within. Above the restored dantian, a new space had appeared, a spiritual sea, vast and unknown. In the realm of cultivation, such a sea was said to reside beyond the limits of the human world, accessible only to those who reached the deep void stage. Light began to flow in from the forest, threads of energy streaming through the trees and gathering around Yi Chen. As the final traces of light spiraled around him, the golden flame within Yi Chen's abdomen absorbed them completely. The energy surged inward, and his body could no longer endure the strain. He collapsed onto the forest floor as darkness gave way to the soft light of dawn. By morning, he was lying on a bed within a sunlit room. A child sat nearby, whistling cheerfully at a table. When Yi Chen stirred awake, the boy turned to him with a smile, greeting him with surprise. Yi Chen asked where he was, and the boy explained that this was Mount Hang Sect. He recounted how, the night before, Yi Chen had been discovered unconscious at the base of the hill. His grandfather had found him and brought him back for care. Lying still, Yi Chen recalled the reality of his circumstances. In the Great Chu Kingdom, a single school divided into 3 dominant sects held influence, among them, the Poison Tyrant School in the north and in the south, Xenyan Sect, Xenyan Sect, and Hangua Sect. Not long ago, he had been expelled from Xenyang. And now, by a twist of fate, he had awakened in Hangua, their rival. The boy seemed to sense his fatigue and promptly ran outside, announcing that he had something prepared for him to eat. Left alone, Yi Chen took the moment to reflect. The events of the previous night had not been a dream. The golden flame still resided within his body. He raised his hand and summoned it, its glow answering his call. He regarded it with resolve, declaring that it would one day aid him in his revenge. Outside, the boy called to him again, urging him to come eat. Yi Chen replied that he was on his way. Stepping out, he was greeted by the boy and his grandfather beside a modest table. The elder welcomed him with a smile, offering a simple meal and inviting him to help himself. Near the table stood a massive eagle. Its presence caught Yi Chen's attention, and he wondered whether it was a spirit beast. The boy announced the start of the meal, while the elder encouraged Yi Chen to eat, noting that he must be hungry. Yi Chen, mindful of the hospitality, tried to express his thanks. The elder brushed it off, saying it was merely an act of kindness toward someone in need. As Yi Chen took his seat, the eagle fixed him with a sharp stare, unsettling in its intensity. Noticing this, the boy playfully scolded the eagle and tossed it meat, immediately softening the beast's demeanor. Then, turning back to Yi Chen, the elder posed a question. He asked if Yi Chen was a martial artist and from which sect he hailed. Yi Chen answered with a trace of hesitation, claiming no ties to any sect or clan and identifying himself only as a loose cultivator. The elder regarded him with mild regret, remarking that it was unfortunate for someone in the prime of youth to remain without a sect. He advised that joining one would grant access to cultivation resources and remove the burden of uncertainty from the path ahead. Yi Chen agreed with the reasoning. Being a lone cultivator carried constant danger, while a sect offered at least some protection and regular supplies to aid cultivation. The elder then asked directly if he would be interested in becoming a disciple of Hangua Sect. Yi Chen expressed interest, but inquired about the qualifications required for entry. With a smile, the elder assured him that it would not be an issue. He would personally prepare a letter of recommendation. Yi Chen thanked him in advance, and the elder replied warmly, calling their meeting a matter of fate. At that moment, the eagle by their side fixed its gaze sharply toward the gate. The wooden door burst open with a loud crash, and a man stepped through wearing a crooked, malicious smile. He took in the sight of the table and their meal, remarking on it with mocking ease. The boy's expression darkened. He demanded to know what Zhang Tao was doing there. Zhang Tao ignored the question, his tone turning harsh as he demanded that the elder hand over what he had come for, or face the consequences. The elder replied that he did not possess what Zhang Tao sought, but the man advanced on him regardless. With a sudden motion, Zhang Tao overturned the table, his voice rising in a threat. The eagle launched itself at him in defense as the boy shouted, calling him a thief. The great bird hovered in front of Zhang Tao, but the intruder's hand lit with Kai. With an aggressive shout, he struck. The blow sent the eagle crashing to the ground, drawing a cry of alarm from the boy. As the child rushed to the injured beast, Zhang Tao fixed him with a cruel smile and taunted him, claiming to have techniques far worse than death. He again demanded what he had come for, hinting at another attack. Before his words could finish, a hand gripped his shoulder. Zhang Tao turned to find Yi Chen behind him, his expression cold and carrying an unmistakable edge. A fist connected squarely with his face. Reeling from the blow, Zhang Tao clutched at the fresh bruise, shouting his outrage. But before he could finish his threat, Yi Chen seized his arm and hoisted him upside down. With a single, decisive motion, he slammed Zhang Tao into the ground. From the side, the elder looked on in astonishment. Zhang Tao, a cultivator at the second stage of Kai condensation, had been defeated in a single exchange. Even if Yi Chen was a skilled fighter, the raw force behind the move was striking. Without further delay, Yi Chen dragged Zhang Tao to the gate and hurled him outside like refuse, warning him to better his conduct under the eyes of the heavens. That night, the elder expressed his gratitude for Yi Chen's actions. Yi Chen dismissed the thanks, saying he had only done what was necessary. The elder then revealed his own identity, an elder of Hangua Sect who had been relegated to tending a small spirit garden due to a grave mistake. Zhang Tao, he admitted, was his disciple, and he blamed himself for failing to guide him properly. Yi Chen replied that entry into a sect and one's growth within it depended on personal ability, and that the fault lay with Zhang Tao alone. The boy added that Zhang Tao's goal had been to steal his grandfather's celestial skill book. Over the years, the elder had given away many things, and Zhang Tao had come repeatedly to take more, causing constant trouble for them both. Yi Chen was aware that the Hangua sect guarded 3 sacred treasures, one of which was the celestial skill. Once bound to a cultivator, it could rapidly increase the bearer's true kai in a short span of time. Such a skill was rare and highly coveted, rarely seen beyond the sect's deepest vaults. Yet somehow, the elder he had met possessed it. On the following morning, the elder soon informed Yi Chen that the recommendation letter was complete, and he could make his way up the mountain the next day. He urged Yi Chen not to squander his talent and handed him a beginner's manual, advising that he read it during his spare time. Not long after, deep within the forest, Yi Chen sat in meditation, the golden flame within him active and steady. Rising from his seated posture, he paused briefly, then called forth the rushing lightning palm. Violent arcs of lightning surged from his palm in response. Exhaling, he steadied himself. He had successfully acquired the technique, a powerful thunder-based attack. Such a move placed great strain on the body. But with the true fire tempering his frame, his bones and tendons had grown resilient enough to withstand it. The Hangua sect itself was vast, organized into 1 temple, 1 hall, 2 gardens, 3 peaks, and 8 pavilions. The Jifa temple served as the place where elders were judged for their wrongdoings, while the Jai Lu Hall functioned for the sect's disciples. Additional details about these 3 peaks and 8 pavilions remain, but let's reserve their discovery for Yi Chen. Inside one of the sect's halls, Yi Chen presented the recommendation letter and introduced himself before the gathered elders, stating that it came from Senior Zhang. The elders exchanged surprised looks at the mention of the name, noting how unusual this was. Discussion arose over who should take Yi Chen as a disciple. One of the elders asked his age, and when Yi Chen replied that he was 16, the 3 elders abruptly excused themselves and left. The remaining elder tried to stop them, but was told that Yi Chen's cultivation was insufficient. With few options left, he proposed that Yi Chen join as an outer sect disciple and asked if he would accept. Yi Chen agreed, and the elder recorded his name onto a jade registration tablet. The elder then handed over the jade tablet, explaining that as an outer sect disciple, Yi Chen would not be granted access to inner sect techniques or treasures. The tablet would allow him to receive only a single bottle of elixir. Yi Chen accepted both the jade tablet and the elixir with thanks. The elder encouraged him to train diligently, telling him to return in 3 months for evaluation. He also directed Yi Chen to the weapon pavilion to select a spirit weapon. Following these instructions, Yi Chen went to the pavilion and spoke with its caretaker, Chow Tai Fuk. The man asked who he was, and Yi Chen introduced himself as a newly appointed outer sect student sent by Elder Kwang Yu. Recognizing the elder's name, Chow Tai Fuk granted him entry, but warned that outer disciples were restricted to the 1st floor and advised him not to wander to the 2nd. Inside the 1st floor, Yi Chen examined the available weapons. None impressed him. Everything he inspected was of low quality. Yi Chen searched the 1st floor of the weapon pavilion, moving from rack to rack. Some weapons felt far too light in his grip, while others proved entirely unsuitable. None met his needs, and the prospect of leaving empty-handed grew stronger with each passing moment. Just as he was about to give up, a surge of golden flame erupted from his abdomen. The flame extended outward, pulling his attention toward a corner of the building. Following its lead, he came upon a greatsword, its hilt bearing a distinct inscription. The carved characters spelled out, "Heaven's Breaker." Lifting the weapon, Yi Chen gauged its weight to be around 200 kilograms. Wielding it in battle could exhaust him to the point of collapse long before the enemy managed to strike him down. The weapon's design was peculiar. Its tip was unsharpened, making it useless for cutting. Yet, its mass made it formidable for smashing. With that in mind, he decided it would be his choice. When he emerged from the pavilion, the caretaker's eyes fell on the sword. The man remarked on Yi Chen's small frame and questioned why he had selected such an iron broadsword over the many others available. Yi Chen replied that it was no ordinary weapon and asked about its origin. The caretaker explained that the sword had been in the Celestial Weapon Pavilion since before his tenure began. It had likely rested there for over a century, but its history was unknown. He warned that its weight was abnormal and suggested Yi Chen take something lighter. Yi Chen refused, and the caretaker, calling him stubborn, allowed him to leave with it. As Yi Chen walked away, several disciples took notice. Recognizing him as the new outer sect recruit, their eyes also settled on the sword strapped to his back. One speculated that perhaps Yi Chen possessed more strength than he appeared to, while another remarked that his judgment might not be sound. Their attention shifted when one of them spotted figures descending through the sky, disciples of the Xenyan sect. Questions quickly arose about their presence, and another explained that in 3 months, the Xenyan sect, Qingyun sect, and their own Hangua sect would be holding a competition. One disciple remarked on the beauty of a female among the arrivals, likening her to a goddess. Another suggested that the visitors were there to discuss the upcoming event. Yi Chen's gaze followed the flying disciples. Among them was someone he recognized, and the sight stirred his resolve for future revenge. High above on one of the flying swords, Jai Ning Shuang glanced downward, sensing a familiar aura. Her fellow disciple asked if something was amiss, but she answered that it was nothing. High atop a solitary mountain peak, Yi Chen sat in stillness, his sword planted upright before him. With blood drawn from his finger, he smeared it across the blade. The sword responded with a sudden glow, strange letters materializing within scroll-like lights that hovered in the air. These luminous formations then directed themselves toward Yi Chen's head. As the lights made contact, his own body began to radiate the same eerie glow. His hands flew to his head, his expression taut with concentration as if grappling with an overwhelming influx of knowledge. The realization struck him. This was the fierce, desolate shining body, a secret technique unveiled. He focused intently on the floating letters, recognizing the immense value of what he had uncovered. Throughout the process, his body continued to glow while the mysterious letters adhered to his skin, gradually seeping into him as he maintained his focus. When the last of the letters dissipated, Yi Chen examined his still glowing hand, acknowledging that relentless effort had yielded its reward. He then drank from a bottle, remarking that the jade elixir was refreshing while explaining that outer sect disciples could receive 1 bottle each month. Still, he noted that a single bottle would not suffice even for brushing his teeth, and determined that he would need to undertake quests in the inner sect to acquire more. Proceeding to the hunting hall, Yi Chen encountered a disciple who informed him that with his Kai condensation limited to the first stage, his talent was inadequate. Another disciple commented that Yi Chen must have been blind to select such a spirit artifact and suggested he was joking. As Yi Chen appeared contemplative, yet another disciple expressed the belief that Yi Chen had been dropped on his head as a child. Standing before the mission board, Yi Chen decided to select a task. Before he could retrieve the wooden tablet, a disciple named Xiao Long collided with him and seized the Blood Wolf mission. The generic-looking disciple regarded Yi Chen while holding the Blood Wolf tablet and inquired if Yi Chen had a problem with this action. 3 additional disciples positioned themselves behind Xiao Long, all 4 wearing mocking expressions. Yi Chen responded that if the senior wished to take it, then so it would be, causing the crimson-chinned disciple to appear angered despite maintaining a smile. Xiao Long grabbed Yi Chen by the shoulder, but Yi Chen immediately enveloped his body with violent energy, causing Xiao Long to retract his hand and state that he had underestimated Yi Chen. Yi Chen turned back and informed him that he displayed no hostility, questioning why they were acting antagonistically. Xiao Long chuckled at this before his anger ignited, declaring that Yi Chen had beaten his younger brother, yet dared claim no hostility. He emphasized that Yi Chen possessed audacity for assaulting the younger brother of Xiao Long, asserting that Yi Chen's life had forfeited its value. Yi Chen inquired if the brother was Zheyang Tao, explaining that Zheyang Tao had initiated the conflict and Yi Chen had been unwillingly drawn in. Inwardly, he noted Xiao Long's fifth stage Kai condensation, concluding he would not lose in a fight. With an ecstatically sadistic smile, Xiao Long cracked his hand and praised Yi Chen's response. His Kai then surged around his body as he menacingly expressed his enjoyment of those who feigned weakness. Observing disciples murmured among themselves, questioning if a fight would erupt. One remarked that with Yi Chen at first stage Kai condensation, he must have taken the wrong medicine to challenge Xiao Long. As the situation escalated, an elder intervened, demanding to know if they were causing a disturbance. He stressed that the mission pavilion was no place for such behavior, directing them to settle matters at the Feng Yang stage if they wished to fight. Xiao Long warned Yi Chen that revenge would come eventually. Not backing down, Yi Chen responded with a smile that he would await their upcoming fight. He then returned his attention to the mission board, finally selecting the Fire Wolf mission. Moments later, under a full moon partially obscured by a rock mountain, he navigated rough terrain while ascending a cliff. Upon reaching the summit, he expressed satisfaction upon discovering a spirit grass. As Yi Chen plucked the flower, a mysterious creature materialized behind him. A wolf composed of blue flame lunged, but before contact, Yi Chen turned and stated it was the monster he was actually looking for. The wolf unleashed a concentrated beam, prompting Yi Chen to clutch his sword behind him. With a defiant shout, he unleashed a forceful slash that overpowered the wolf. After retrieving a small purple sphere from the wolf's corpse and inspecting it, he confirmed his mission's completion. Suddenly distracted, he noticed an attack directed at him and blocked with his arm. He shouted that this was neutral ground, demanding to know who dared launch a sneak attack. A silhouette emerged from behind, commending Yi Chen on his keen senses. An old man stepped forward, demanding that Yi Chen surrender everything valuable, promising to spare his life but threatening suffering otherwise. Clutching his injured arm, Yi Chen responded that he was merely a first-stage Kai condensation disciple possessing no treasures. The elder chuckled, observing Yi Chen's apparent unwillingness to comply. Suddenly, Yi Chen sensed an unusual disturbance within his body. The elder unleashed a mysterious purple haze toward Yi Chen, wearing an evil smile while stating that the youth should not blame him. Yi Chen met this with a confident expression, indicating he held no grudge. Instantly, Yi Chen employed his rushing lightning palm, lunging at the elder. The elder appeared surprised, coughing up blood as Yi Chen's hand impaled him. In that moment, the elder realized Yi Chen had never been poisoned at all. Yi Chen confirmed that he had indeed been poisoned earlier, but as the elder collapsed lifelessly, he reflected on how poisoning had actually helped refine his golden flame. Inside a cave, Yi Chen observed his pouch absorbing the old man's possessions, remarking that the elder's belongings were rather impressive. He expressed satisfaction upon discovering spirit elixir and over 500 spirit stones. Additionally, he found poisons among the items, declaring he would certainly utilize them, noting with amusement that the elder had been remarkably well-equipped. His curiosity piqued by a book, Yi Chen examined it closely. Holding the volume, he noted its intriguing nature. "Bestial heart fury," he exclaimed, observing how desires manifested. As he read, he described the contents as magical. Yi Chen closed the book with a grin, acknowledging the acquisition of another treasure. He trained the technique, which consisted of movements derived from animals. Soar, evil wolf catches rabbit, tiger's paw strength, and great ape's agility. As the night deepened, Yi Chen exhaled, noting his exhaustion. His attention was drawn upward to a figure soaring through the sky, a void soul realm expert. For cultivators, those in the condensation stage or human origin stage required flying spirit beasts to ascend to the skies. Cultivators in the true yang stage needed to ride flying swords. Once cultivation reached the spirit void stage, one could ride divine rainbows. Only when cultivation reached the sky void stage could one truly achieve flight without reliance on spirit beasts, flying swords, or divine rainbows. Yi Chen watched the figure, entranced by her beauty to such an extent that he failed to notice she appeared to be in pain. Not far behind her, 3 other flying individuals shouted that they had found her. Yi Chen wondered if she was being chased. He thought to himself that this situation had nothing to do with him and that he should not become involved, determining that the best course was to remove himself from the matter. To his surprise, the female cultivator landed not far behind him. Yi Chen looked at the woman with a conflicted expression as her pursuers shouted, demanding she reveal her hiding place. Their eyes met for a moment, and as the 3 pursuers arrived, Yi Chen advised her to remain concealed behind the nearby bush and refrain from making any noise. Yi Chen approached the 3 individuals and greeted them with caution, introducing himself as an ordinary mortal who was merely passing through. The person in the middle demanded to know if Yi Chen had seen anyone pass through, insisting he tell the truth. Yi Chen pointed in a direction and stammered that he thought they had gone that way. The man replied with a smile shared among his companions, warning Yi Chen not to lie or he would suffer a horrible death. His companion added that the woman was heavily injured and had been given an aphrodisiac, noting she would not be able to travel far. They urged haste, stating the first prince would be pleased if they returned with her. The female cultivator emerged from the bush as Yi Chen sighed in relief, thankful that the pursuers had departed. Unnoticed by Yi Chen, the woman stared mysteriously, her face flushed with color. Yi Chen then turned his attention to her as the female cultivator collapsed. Before she could fall completely, Yi Chen cautioned her to be careful and caught her. His heart raced as he became aware of their physical proximity. As the night deepened, Yi Chen returned to the cave. Inside, he placed his hand on the female's back, attempting to heal her. The woman reacted, her face reddening as she expressed sensations of heat. Yi Chen observed her awakening and addressed her as senior. The blushing woman turned to face him, again commenting on the heat. To Yi Chen's surprise, the female cultivator suddenly moved close to his chest. Before he could question her actions, she kissed him. The female quickly deduced that this behavior must result from an aphrodisiac, noting that even this minimal exposure could cause such effects. The woman was taken aback when Yi Chen suddenly pushed her away. However, with her superior cultivation, the female easily overpowered him and forced him to the ground. The experience unfolded with his mind resisting while his body responded affirmatively. Though not directly shown, the shadows and discarded clothing nearby indicated what transpired between them. The scene shifted to the Hangua Sect spiritual herb garden, where Zhao Tao entered through the gate accompanied by 2 disciples. He demanded that the grandpa hand over Yi Chen, referring to him as a little imbecile. The grandpa, clutching his abdomen, responded that Yi Chen had already departed. Zhao Tao inquired about the divine incantation, instructing the grandpa to hand it over quickly. The grandpa claimed he possessed no divine incantations. Zhao Tao remarked that the grandpa would not shed tears until faced with death and commanded his companions to beat him mercilessly. Back in the beast forest among rocky mountains, a shout echoed with the declaration of intent to kill. Gripped by condensed kai around his neck, Yi Chen struggled to tell the female cultivator that she was being unreasonable, reminding her that she had been the one to throw herself onto him. The female cultivator lifted him higher, maintaining that this fact did not excuse his actions. Yi Chen called her a crazy woman, expressing regret that he had saved her. The female cultivator labeled him a pervert who deserved to die. Yi Chen pleaded with her to stop choking him as he gasped for air, while she insisted that this served him right. Before she could finish her words, the female cultivator sensed multiple people approaching, Haru in particular. She rushed to leave immediately, but told Yi Chen she would return to settle matters with him later. Yi Chen was thrown back into the cave, still tied up. He cursed upon hitting the ground, but then noticed something outside. Extending his senses, he detected that the female cultivator was being chased again and saw this as his chance to be rescued. The pursuing cultivators addressed the female cultivator as Chu Ling, asking why she continued to struggle pathetically. Chu Ling condensed into a flower-like form behind her and declared that those who plotted against her would pay the price. One of the cultivators told her she was overestimating herself, but his companion informed the group that several powerful auras were approaching them, people from the Hangua sect. As the pursuing cultivators decided to leave, Chu Ling spat out blood, suggesting she had reached her limit. Fortunately, Chu Xuan of the Eternal Mountain sect had arrived. Chu Xuan noticed Chu Ling was wounded, but Chu Ling assured her elder sister that it was nothing to worry about. She then advised everyone to depart first, stating she still had something to do and that they should not follow her for this matter. Chu Ling frowned and, while blushing, referred to Yi Chen as a little rascal, thinking about how she would get back at him. She returned to the cave but realized that Yi Chen had already run away. She shouted from the top of the cliff that he should not let her catch him. Then, remembering what had transpired between them, her cheeks flushed with a mixture of frustration. To her surprise, Chu Xuan found her and asked what she was doing. Chu Ling responded that it was nothing, but Chu Xuan inquired what she was looking for. Could it be that she had dropped a treasure nearby? Chu Ling responded with confusion, asking what treasure and claiming she was merely roaming around aimlessly. Chu Xuan did not believe her, but then remembered they should return home as Instructor Zhang was waiting for them. Deep within the forest, a hand emerged from a wolf corpse. Yi Chen climbed out and caught his breath, stating that he had almost lost his life. Returning to the herb garden, a cry echoed as someone shouted for them to cry more. Zhao Tao kicked the little kid, who was suspended by his hands, remarking on how hard the child's bones were. The grandpa, also tied up, called Zhao Tao a brute and offered himself as a target instead. Zhao Tao equipped a whip and accepted the challenge. He lashed the elder as the kid worriedly called out for his grandpa. Zhao Tao declared he would make the elder regret not handing over the celestial skill book. The punishing continued, the sound disturbing even the birds in the forest. One of Zhao Tao's companions warned him to be careful, as killing them would be a great sin with consequences they couldn't bear. Zhao Tao responded that the elder was trash and nobody would care anyway. His attention then shifted to the large eagle hung upside down on a tree branch. He remarked that they treated the bird as family and offered to cook it for their enjoyment. The grandpa protested angrily. Zhao Tao ordered his companions to butcher the bird for him. The two agreed, mentioning they had been at it all night and were quite hungry. The kid struggled against his ropes as the trio approached the eagle. Just then, Yi Chen arrived with a wolf corpse behind his back, informing the grandpa he had returned. He looked shocked upon witnessing the scene. He saw the elder, the grandson, and the eagle tied above the ground. Zhao Tao taunted him for daring to return home. Angered by what he saw, Yi Chen threatened Zhao Tao that no one could save him today. Zhao Tao directed a confident palm attack with a smile, mocking Yi Chen's bold words. To his surprise, Yi Chen rushed toward him, with Zhao Tao wondering if the boy was crazy for receiving his Yu Yang Jai Kai attack head-on. Upon reaching and striking Zhao Tao, Yi Chen declared he was courting death. Zhao Tao was sent flying, and his comrades rushed to help him. Zhao Tao ordered them to attack immediately. The two companions lunged at Yi Chen together, but he easily repelled them with his lightning palm technique. Without hesitation, Yi Chen rushed toward the elder and cut both ropes binding them. He acknowledged the situation as his fault, while the child cried for his weakened grandpa. The grandpa reassured Yi Chen not to blame himself. Yi Chen swore upon his name that from that day forward, nobody would harm them. Turning to the two lackeys, Yi Chen heard their stuttering apologies. He approached and stated that true remorse required consequences. Yi Chen kicked them in the abdomen, and one clutched his midsection, lamenting the loss of his cultivation. Yi Chen then advanced slowly toward Zhao Tao, who panicked and threatened him by invoking his master, Ji Hong of the Yi Yang sect's first seat. With finality, Yi Chen reiterated that no one could save Zhao Tao that day. He delivered a powerful kick to Zhao Tao's abdomen, lifting him off the ground and causing him to cough blood before crashing down. Yi Chen produced 3 needles, declaring he would return 1,000-fold the pain inflicted upon the elder and child. He threw the needles at Zhao Tao, poisonous silver needles personally tested by the old man he had encountered earlier, containing a blend of insect venoms that would cause endless agony without killing. Zhao Tao screamed in unbearable pain, then sobbed and bowed repeatedly, begging for mercy. He clutched Yi Chen's leg and revealed that Brother Zhao had sent him to retrieve the celestial skill book, claiming no personal involvement. Hearing this, Yi Chen strode to the gate and declared that Xiao Long would pay the price, even if it meant pursuing him beyond death. At Hangua Sect's D peak, an elder's voice boomed as he lectured the assembled disciples, instructing them to practice the way of the Tao and pay respect to heaven and earth, declaring heaven and earth as the absolute truth. Elder Gay Hong of the Ti Yang sect continued his lecture, explaining that cultivation is the foundation of Kai, and Kai is the root of man. Suddenly, a shout interrupted them, declaring that someone would wait for Xiao Long at the Fangyun stage. Hearing this, one disciple wondered who was challenging Brother Zhao. Another replied that it didn't matter who it was, since Brother Zhao was about to reach the 6th stage of Kai condensation and would receive more of the master's secrets than any other Hangua sect disciple. They speculated that only the 3 main disciples would dare challenge him. Closing his eyes, Elder Gay Hong asked his disciple Long if he knew who was challenging him. Zhao Long bowed respectfully, responding with a confident smile that it was someone named Yi Chen, an outer disciple. The elder wondered aloud about Yi Chen, questioning if it was the same 16-year-old at the 1st stage of Kai condensation. Still bowing, Zhao Long asked if his master knew him. The elder recalled that Yi Chen had sought his guidance to become a D Peak member, but he had rejected him, stating that D Peak did not need trash. The listening disciples reacted, with one exclaiming that this explained the situation, and another suggesting that Yi Chen, having been rejected from D Peak, was using this tactic to gain acceptance and guidance from the master. Elder Gay Hong gave permission for Zhao Long to proceed, advising that a little spar was acceptable but cautioning him not to be too harsh, as he did not want others to accuse D Peak of being a bully. Not long after, at the Fangyun stage, people gathered as Yi Chen, a 1st-stage Kai condensation newcomer, challenged Zhao Long. Among the audience, one asked if the challenger was Yi Chen and inquired if he was a new disciple of Hangua sect. Another responded that they had heard all 3 outer school masters had rejected him, leaving him as an outer disciple. A third speculated that Yi Chen was challenging Zhao Long, a disciple from one of the 3 schools, in order to be accepted. Moments later, someone shouted that Zhao Long had arrived, catching Yi Chen's attention. The other disciples immediately formed a line and bowed before him, offering greetings to Brother Zhao. Climbing the stage, Zhao Long addressed Yi Chen, stating that he hadn't wanted to see Yi Chen, but Yi Chen had come to see him regardless, questioning if Yi Chen thought he had lived too long. Yi Chen replied impatiently, commanding Zhao Long to get on the stage. One of Zhao Long's lackeys pointed at Yi Chen, demanding to know how he dared speak to Brother Zhao in such a manner. The lackey continued that senior Brother Zhao wouldn't need to personally handle beating Yi Chen up. But Zhao Long stopped him, saying with a mocking smile that they should wait, explaining that since junior brother Yi was the one challenging him, he should be the one to go so everyone could watch and learn a few tricks from him. With the sounds of swoosh, tap, both Yi Chen and Zhao Long entered the stage simultaneously. Before starting, Zhao Long boasted that D Peak had always been fair and they couldn't break the Feng Yun stage's rules. The watching female disciples shouted in admiration, expressing how handsome and cool Brother Zhao was. Yi Chen gripped his sword and challenged Zhao Long to come forward. Zhao Long smiled and raised a single finger, suggesting there was no need to rush. He explained that since ancient times, people had always bet when fighting in the Feng Yun stage, proposing that he and junior brother Yi should also bet something. Curious, Yi Chen asked what Zhao Long wanted to bet. This crimson chin-looking dude turned around, placed his hand on his prominent chin, and proposed that the loser would serve the winner for the rest of his life, asking Yi Chen what he thought of the proposal. Some of the watching disciples expressed that the bet was too extreme. Another disciple remarked that betting the rest of one's life equated to selling oneself to Xiao Long, and that Yi Chen would suffer greatly. Yi Chen responded to Xiao Long with an intrigued smile, suggesting that if Brother Xiao wished to bet, they should wager something more significant. Xiao Long inquired about what Yi Chen proposed to bet. Yi Chen replied that they should bet their lives. Xiao Long questioned whether the boy understood the gravity of his words. Yi Chen countered by asking if Xiao Long was afraid. Xiao Long roared with laughter, declaring himself unafraid, and agreed to the deal with a confident smile. Immediately afterward, he charged at Yi Chen, stating that since Yi Chen sought death, he should not blame Xiao Long for the consequences, and threw a punch. Yi Chen blocked the punch with a resounding impact, admitting he had underestimated Xiao Long. Lightning surged as Yi Chen defended. Yi Chen then lunged with his sword, declaring that Xiao Long would regret his actions. As the battle continued, one onlooker expressed disbelief at the junior disciple's strength. Another noted that despite being only at the qi condensation first stage, Yi Chen withstood 3 moves from Brother Xiao Long, acknowledging his skill. A third observer reflected on the scarce condensed qi at the qi condensation first stage, challenging the logic of diverting true qi to control the heaven breaker. They emphasized that this would drain true qi reserves and hinder speed due to the weapon's heft, ultimately deeming Yi Chen's decision to brandish the heaven breaker as ill-advised. As the battle progressed, Xiao Long forced the heaven breaker from Yi Chen's grip. He then unleashed 3 slashes of Kai with a swift motion, his crimson chin prominently visible as he challenged Yi Chen to demonstrate his capabilities. Unperturbed, Yi Chen evaded the attack effortlessly using the bestial heart fury ape jump. Xiao Long perceived Yi Chen only as a blur. Sweating profusely, Xiao Long suddenly found Yi Chen appearing above him, kicking his face while commanding him to leave. Touching his bruised face, Xiao Long declared that Yi Chen was courting death. Xiao Long launched an attack, but Yi Chen dodged it. Yi Chen then countered with the Beast Fury Tiger's Paw technique, charging forward while declaring that Xiao Long was full of flaws. With swift movements, he rapidly closed the distance, explaining to Xiao Long that engaging in close combat would be his downfall. A single slash sent Xiao Long flying, shouting in pain as he was propelled through the air. The audience watched with mouths agape, marveling at the fighting style before them. The raw and primitive moves had defeated Xiao Long with apparent ease. Despite landing on his feet, Xiao Long paused, huffing with an expression of utter disbelief. He then resolved himself to attack, employing the rushing blue wolf fist technique. The audience watched in awe, exclaiming that they hadn't realized the first seat's techniques had already been passed down to Xiao Long. Yi Chen responded with his own rumbling technique, the lightning palm. The collision created a massive boom as their energies mixed explosively. Xiao Long skidded backward, shouting in disbelief. The blue wolf fist was a technique in D peak not taught to many, renowned for its brute force, and many outer disciples had been defeated by this single move alone. Yet now, a first-stage qi condensation outer disciple had broken this technique. Such humiliation was something Xiao Long could not accept. Shocked by this outcome, the other disciples wondered if Yi Chen was truly only at the first stage of qi condensation, remarking that the kid was simply too powerful. Following their clash, Yi Chen leaped with his sword, his body crackling with lightning as he declared this would be the end. As this happened, Xiao Long looked dumbfounded and could only defend with his flimsy-looking sword. Under the weight of Yi Chen's weapon, Xiao Long's sword predictably cracked, leaving him appearing as though suffering from hemorrhoids at that moment. The audience displayed expressions of utter disbelief, resembling your typical YouTube thumbnail with their agape mouths, as they exclaimed aloud that the 5th-stage qi condensation, Xiao Long had been defeated by a first-stage qi condensation outer disciple. With his sword hovering above Xiao Long's shoulder, Yi Chen declared that Xiao Long had lost, a statement others found impossible to accept. Yi Chen then continued, stating that Xiao Long's life belonged to him and announced his intention to take it immediately. This declaration shocked the onlookers. Some understood that Yi Chen would face severe consequences if he killed the D Peak's top disciple, while others questioned whether Yi Chen would truly kill someone in broad daylight. Xiao Long wore a smile resembling that of a leering pervert, though his profusely sweating face betrayed his facade. He declared his status as a D-peak disciple, questioning whether Yi Chen was certain about proceeding with the killing. Inwardly, Xiao Long reflected that the bet was merely a joke, doubting that a life would genuinely be handed over after a loss, and believing that connections ultimately mattered more than strength. The other D-peak disciples protested on behalf of their senior, warning that their teacher would not spare Yi Chen if he killed a senior disciple. Yi Chen responded that even if that were the case, Xiao Long's life belonged to him. At that moment, Ren Yang Peak Su Xin Yue emerged from the crowd, addressing Yi Chen with a request to treat the confrontation as sparring and mutual learning, urging him to spare Xiao Long. Yi Chen countered by questioning whether she would speak similarly had he been the defeated one. Su Xin responded that his killing intent was excessive and would obstruct his cultivation path. Yi Chen frowned at her words, inwardly reflecting that individuals of privileged status often viewed others with condescension, and their pity served merely as hypocrisy. He then inquired if she intended for him to release Xiao Long. Maintaining her composed tone, Su Xin expressed her wish for Yi Chen to pursue a righteous martial path. Yi Chen challenged her principles, asking whether she possessed a loved one and if she would still abstain from killing him should he torture that person day and night. This prompted Su Xin to pause and reevaluate her position. Yi Chen then informed her that she could withhold her insincere displays of compassion toward others. Appearing momentarily stunned, Su Xin began to speak, but was interrupted as Yi Chen summoned heavenly fire to his hand. He raised it, preparing to strike Xiao Long. Before the blow could descend, a rapid blur traversing from mountain to mountain landed upon the stage. The elder arrived swiftly, disturbing a few leaves in his descent. Elder Gehang surveyed the scene, observing Xiao Long pinned beneath Yi Chen's heaven's breaker. While the other disciples greeted the elder, Xiao Long inwardly laughed to himself. He called out to his master, requesting assistance and informing that Yi Chen was attempting to kill him. Xiao Long's fellow disciples echoed his claim, stating that Yi Chen's bloodlust was excessive and that he should be severely punished. Gehang, wearing a stern expression, commanded Yi Chen to put down his weapon. He acknowledged Yi Chen's strength and extended an invitation for Yi Chen to become his disciple. The other disciples couldn't believe this, with one remarking that this was the first time they had witnessed the elder personally invite a disciple. Among the crowds, someone exclaimed in disbelief, suggesting that Yi Chen might have orchestrated everything to gain Elder Gehang's attention and acceptance into D Yang Peak, implying he had finally achieved his goal. However, Yi Chen smiled and responded to the elder, expressing gratitude for the offer but declining interest in becoming a disciple of D Yang Peak. The audience reacted with shock, exclaiming that Gehang was one of Hangua Sect Alliance's big 3 peak elders in the top spot. They noted that countless others had attempted to become his disciples, yet this first-stage Qi condensation practitioner had rejected such an offer. They emphasized this was the first time Gehang had invited an outer disciple to join him, only to be rejected immediately. Clearly offended, Gehang demanded to know what Yi Chen had said before projecting Kai toward Yi Chen. Yi Chen, bleeding from his mouth, reiterated that he did not wish to become a disciple of D Yang Peak. Inwardly reflecting that he had been ignored by the 3 masters during selection, Yi Chen considered how one of them now extended an offer after witnessing his potential. He resolved that he, Yi Chen, could not be easily swayed, believing a good horse would never graze on an old pasture. Gehang laughed in contempt, expressing his approval of Yi Chen's defiance. The other disciples easily understood the implication, realizing Yi Chen's days were numbered and that Elder Gehang would not let him off easily. They remarked that Yi Chen's future in the sect would become hell, while others expressed that Yi Chen was being absurd, questioning who he believed himself to be. Gehang released his Kai, causing Yi Chen to shield himself, and commanded Yi Chen to release Xiao Long. Yi Chen responded by pointing a knife at Xiao Long's neck, stating he could not release the person before him. He explained that both had agreed to bet their lives before the fight, so Xiao Long must die that day. Gehang, with Kai-infused palm, called Yi Chen an imbecile and accused him of courting death. Yi Chen replied that he was a person, not an animal. Inwardly, Yi Chen resolved that if Gehang attempted to make a move, he would end Xiao Long's life. Gehang asked if Yi Chen was threatening him, his Kai surrounding his body. Inwardly, Gehang acknowledged Yi Chen's courage but warned him against believing he could challenge a first-seat elder so easily. Yi Chen reiterated that he had already stated their agreement to bet their lives, so Xiao Long must die that day. He offered that it was possible for him to spare Xiao Long, but it would depend on how much Gehang was willing to pay. Yi Chen expressed willingness to step back, but threatened that if Gehang insisted on killing him, both would die there. He then pressed his knife closer to Xiao Long's neck, causing Xiao Long to call for help from his master. Inwardly, Yi Chen believed that if Gehang wanted to save Dai Yang Peak's first seat's face, he could spare Xiao Long's life, but he could not release him without compensation. Yi Chen asked the elder what he thought of this proposition. Yi Chen continued, reminding Gehang they were at the Fengyun stage with many people present. He questioned whether Gehang still wanted to kill him in front of so many witnesses. Yi Chen pointed out that as a first-seat elder, killing an insignificant outer disciple like him would risk tarnishing Gehang's reputation. He urged Gehang to consider his disciple Xiao Long and the resources spent training him, noting it would be a waste if Xiao Long were to die alongside him. Gehang offered Yi Chen a final chance, asking if he understood what he was attempting to do. Yi Chen confirmed his understanding but refused to yield. Gehang burst forward from his position and advanced toward them, declaring he would help Yi Chen release his grip. He walked menacingly, his Kai overwhelming the area, but before he could proceed further, a sudden voice from an unseen location intervened. The voice accused Gehang of considering killing an outer disciple as a crime, questioning if he intended to break the sect's laws. Gehang responded, addressing the voice as Dao Jai, explaining that Yi Chen wanted to kill his disciple. He asked if Dao Jai expected him to stand by while his disciple died before his eyes, or if he should ignore Yi Chen's crimes. The voice laughed, denying any cover for Yi Chen. It pointed out that both had agreed to bet their lives on the Fengyun stage, questioning how Gehang could claim Yi Chen wanted to kill his disciple. The voice asked how it was shielding Yi Chen, noting that Yi Chen had already backed down and that Gehang could save his disciple with sincerity. It questioned why killing was necessary, suggesting that if one loses, they should lose with dignity. The voice accused Gehang of being unable to afford losing, thus resorting to killing, and asked if he thought the voice was blind. Gehang was stumped and could only respond with "you" before falling silent. He then turned to Yi Chen, retrieved something from his sleeve, and threw it at him with force, calling it sincerity. Yi Chen, appearing in pain, blocked the object with his Heaven's Breaker. He denounced the action as sinister and cunning as Gehang departed with his disciple, warning that Yi Chen would pay dearly for his actions. Yi Chen smiled, expressing that he was waiting. At Tianyang Peak, disciples gossiped about Xiao Long nearly being killed by Yi Chen's sword. They continued discussing how Dai Yang Peak's first-seat elder became so enraged he almost killed Yi Chen on the spot. Chow Tai Fuk listened to their conversation. Similarly, at Renyang Peak, Su Xin informed his master about the incident, surprising the elder that Xiao Long had lost to Yi Chen. At Dayang Peak, Gehang shouted that everyone was trash. Xiao Long knelt as Gehang continued, accusing them of ruining Dayang Peak's reputation. Deep within the jungle, Yi Chen sat examining Gehang's pouch, marveling at the 500 spirit stones inside. He realized Gehang must be a significant figure. In the outer gate of Hangyu Sect, each disciple received only 20 spirit stones monthly, making this amount substantial wealth for Yi Chen. Inwardly, Yi Chen understood that Elder Gehang would seek revenge, acknowledging the coming days would not be easy. Returning to the spiritual herb garden, the little boy expressed excitement at seeing so much meat. Yi Chen and the elder cooked, while the boy told the big eagle it could have a full meal that day. As they cooked, the elder began speaking to Yi Chen about the day's events, but was interrupted when Yi Chen assured him he was fine. The elder responded that if Yi Chen was fine, that was good. Inwardly, the elder reflected that he never expected an unrelated man he had once saved to stand up for him, an old man like himself. The elder's gaze drifted into contemplation, recalling how Yi Chen had challenged Gehang's authority without hesitation. He remembered the precise moment of his removal as Sect elder due to an unforgivable crime, an event that resulted in the destruction of his cultivation and demotion to tending the little spiritual garden. Since his relegation to the hill, his circumstances had grown increasingly miserable. Previously, people had looked up to him, but now he was looked down upon by senior brothers from his past. Worse still, Zhao Tong, his former disciple, and other younger disciples frequently created trouble for him. Yet as he observed Yi Chen and his grandson, the elder reflected that compared to those senior brothers and disrespectful younger disciples who deceived their masters and dishonored their ancestors, Yi Chen was truly different. Amid this light-hearted atmosphere, Yi Chen noticed Su Xin approaching in the garden. Yi Chen inquired about her purpose. Su Xin remained silent initially, then regarded him with a belittling gaze as she announced that her master invited him to Rinyang Peak. She produced a yellow card, informing him that if he agreed, he could come to Rinyang Peak the following day. Su Xin tossed the card toward Yi Chen, who was eating. Yi Chen caught it deftly with his chopsticks, avoiding contact with his bare hands while remarking on invitations from Rinyang Peak. Then, with a stern expression, he expressed being flattered by the offer, not even hiding the sarcasm in his voice. As Su Xin turned to leave, she stated she had delivered the message and he could do as he wished. Before departing, she paused and looked back, warning him not to consider himself invincible after defeating Xiao Long. She emphasized that Hangua sect could easily destroy him and that many powerful people existed within it. She cautioned that excessive aggression would prevent his success. Yi Chen appeared indifferent to her words, but the elder advised him that Rinyang Peak was one of the 3 main peaks of the Outer Gate's outer peaks, and suggested he accept the invitation. The elder advised Yi Chen not to let his future slip away, urging him to bear with the situation. Yi Chen acknowledged the elder's words, stating he understood. Both Yi Chen and the elder then noticed another person approaching. Tianyang Peak's first closed-door disciple, Yuan Wei, inquired if Yi Chen was the one who defeated Xiao Long. Yi Chen questioned why the senior brother was visiting so late at night. Yuan Wei responded dismissively, explaining it was merely to deliver a message from his master, who invited Yi Chen to become a disciple of Tianyang Peak. Yi Chen replied with equal dismissiveness, affirming the invitation. Before departing, Yuan Wei cautioned Yi Chen against failing to appreciate kindness, noting he had already recklessly offended Diang Peak. Yi Chen watched Yuan Wei leave, reflecting internally on the irony of his situation. No one had wanted to accept him 2 days prior, yet now everyone was suddenly recruiting him. Yuan Wei turned back, declaring that in the eyes of Tianyang Peak, Yi Chen was nothing. Yi Chen set down his plate. The elder looked at him, about to speak, but Yi Chen anticipated his words, explaining that while he might have sought backup, the recruits clearly looked down on him. He questioned whether joining them would invite trouble. With a dismissive attitude, Yi Chen stated he had seen through the sect's nature, a sinister world where strength commanded respect. Though merely an outer disciple, he preferred not to join the 3 main peaks. Instead, he committed to his own path, doing his best without making himself suffer. Witnessing his defiance, the elder supported him, emphasizing that the teachings of the older generation would be remembered by the younger generation. The sun set behind the rock mountain as lights swirled around Yi Chen, who meditated above a huge black rock. Passing disciples noticed him and remarked that he had become famous after his first battle, but his days would not become easier. They continued discussing that Gehang would not easily spare him, with one mentioning hearing that Gehang had allowed his direct disciples to leave their closed-door training early, threatening to beat Yi Chen. Another expressed anticipation for the coming confrontation. Hearing their conversation, Yi Chen questioned internally about direct disciples. He stood up, resolving to hurry and improve his strength. Yi Chen then visited Wanbao Pavilion, a shop of Hangua sect that sold various items such as spiritual grass and other spiritual materials useful for cultivators. While looking inside, he recalled that in the previous Xenyan sect, there had been similar martial arts shops with booming business. He wondered aloud whether this Wanbao Pavilion of Hangua sect contained any treasures. Observing the bald shopkeeper, Yi Chen decided to enter. He bowed and greeted the elder, who responded with acknowledgement, inviting him to browse freely. Before Yi Chen could leave, the elder advised him against stealing anything. Yi Chen assured the elder that he would not dare to do so. Looking at the displayed items, Yi Chen expressed admiration for their extraordinary nature. His attention was then captured by something specific, causing him to pause. Yi Chen identified the item as a fire lotus. Upon examining the price tag of 500 spirit stones, his expression turned weary as he considered his total of only 1,000 spirit stones. Yi Chen then moved energetically between shelves, examining various types of spiritual herbs. He reflected that consuming and refining these spirit grasses would significantly increase his cultivation level. However, as he observed the products, his expression shifted to concern at their prices. He lamented his financial limitations, recognizing he couldn't afford them. Moving to the Xuan-level cultivation skill area, Yi Chen stopped at the Spirit Jade Ancient Scrolls. He examined one scroll, recognizing it as an ancient refining method for Spirit Jade liquid, and expressed surprise that Wanbao Pavilion sold such items. The shopkeeper interjected, asking if Yi Chen was interested in the Spirit Jade Ancient Scroll. The keeper offered to sell it for 20 spirit stones. Yi Chen turned back with doubt, questioning why it was so inexpensive. He approached the shopkeeper and expressed skepticism about the authenticity, noting Spirit Jade liquid's preciousness compared to the low price. The elder quickly assured him it was genuine, explaining the scroll's high value was offset by its uselessness to ordinary cultivators. Yi Chen inquired about the reason. The elder responded nonchalantly that refining Spirit Jade liquid required flames bred from heaven and earth, at minimum needing earth fire. Since ordinary cultivators lacked earth fire, the scroll was useless to them. He added that Hangua Sect possessed only one earth fire, sealed in the Spirit Pill Pavilion and treasured by immortal Su Fu, whose pavilion generated more profit than Wanbao Pavilion. Knowing he possessed something better than an earth fire, Yi Chen smiled and tossed his coins to the elder, deciding to purchase the Spirit Jade Ancient Scroll. As he left the pavilion, Yi Chen reflected inwardly with satisfaction that if earth fire could refine Spirit Jade liquid, his stronger true fire would certainly suffice. He concluded that by carefully comprehending the refining method, he would definitely be able to refine the Spirit Jade liquid. Yi Chen was just about to leave the Wanbao Pavilion in high spirits when his true fire unexpectedly extended from his body again, indicating another treasure. Following the extended flame with a broad smile, he chuckled softly, noting that the treasure it detected must be extraordinary. The true fire guided him to a mysterious gourd. Yi Chen picked up the gourd and smiled, acknowledging it as the source. He peered inside, observing that it appeared to contain nothing special. He wondered if the true fire had reacted due to the gourd's large internal space, affirming his trust in the flame's guidance. He proceeded to the shopkeeper and expressed shock at the price of 1,300 spirit stones, requesting a discount since he only possessed 1,100. The shopkeeper countered that the remaining 200 could be covered with other items, questioning whether Yi Chen truly desired the gourd. Ultimately, Yi Chen left the shop looking dejected, lamenting his depleted funds. The shopkeeper, meanwhile, reflected inwardly on his substantial profit. 1,100 spirit stones, plus a bottle of bloodthirsty pills from the Bloodthirsty Palace. In a secluded spot where a bird perched on a tree, Yi Chen dropped a droplet of blood onto the gourd, affectionately urging it to provide a secret realm or technique to compensate for his financial sacrifice. Moments later, the bird startled and fled as Yi Chen shouted about finding nothing inside, crying out about the loss of his spirit stones, bloodthirsty pills, and entire fortune. With tearful eyes fixed on the Spirit Jade Ancient Scroll he'd just purchased, Yi Chen placed his hopes in it to recover his losses. As sunset gave way to night, he reflected that refining spiritual jade liquid wasn't overly complicated, requiring only about a dozen types of spiritual grass. Moving swiftly through the forest canopy, Yi Chen traveled between branches, collecting various spiritual grasses with practiced precision. Upon securing the final snow jade orchid, he landed gracefully on the forest floor, momentarily admiring his luck. His satisfaction vanished when a voice suddenly cut through the night, claiming the orchid belonged to her. Su Xin emerged with an air of superiority, demanding Yi Chen surrender the snow jade orchid. Remaining grounded, Yi Chen calmly asserted his claim to the herb and suggested she find her own. Enraged, Su Xin charged forward, calling him an ungrateful bastard. Yi Chen's expression shifted to annoyance as he questioned whether this represented the true extent of her righteousness, noting she now resorted to stealing herbs. Their attacks met with a resounding impact as Su Xin's palm collided with Yi Chen's fist, forcing her back 2 steps. Yi Chen's surprise was evident when Su Xin drew her sword with a dismissive snort. She lunged forward, unleashing the clear wind chanting technique, while Yi Chen firmly gripped his Heaven's Breaker hilt, preparing to defend himself. He hadn't anticipated she would employ a Xuan skill merely for some spirit grass. With practiced movement, Yi Chen raised his weapon, successfully blocking her advancing strike. Yi Chen's expression grew more serious as his eyes locked onto Su Xin. She rushed toward him, her words sharp as she accused him of killing people too brutally, warning that such acts would hinder his cultivation. He immediately retorted, condemning her for killing fellow disciples over nothing more than a spiritual grass. His voice carried further, demanding to know whether it was his killing intent that was excessive or hers. Su Xin faltered under his rebuttal. Exposed for her hypocrisy, she could only force out a single word in frustration. At that very moment, Yi Chen shifted, catching sight of sudden movement at his side. A strike came rushing toward him. He raised his sword to block, but the power pressing against him revealed itself to be from a cultivator of the Foundation establishment stage. Even though his blade intercepted the attack, the impact drove pain through his body. When he steadied himself, the spirit herb was already in the hand of a newcomer. The man declared boldly that Yi Chen had a lot of nerve, accusing him of daring to move against people of Renyang Peak. Without pause, the newcomer launched another attack, this time landing the blow directly on Yi Chen. The force knocked him back, blood spilling at the corner of his mouth as he clutched his chest. He forced out a bitter word of condemnation, branding the attack despicable. The newcomer only answered with a mocking laugh. Su Xin's tone shifted at once, calling out to the man as brother Chihao. Chihao asked her if she was all right, and she quickly assured him that she was fine. Both of them turned their attention fully to Yi Chen. Su Xin identified him by name, and Chihao remarked with amused recognition that this was the new outer disciple of the Hangua sect. Still wounded but standing firm, Yi Chen declared that someone of the Foundation establishment realm had actually chosen to launch a sneak attack. Chihao dismissed the protest with disdain, saying that even if Yi Chen had defeated Xiao Long, it did not make him invincible. In Chihao's eyes, Yi Chen was still weak and frail. He insisted that Renyang Peak had already given him face, but Yi Chen had not shown the willingness to accommodate them, and he called it a shame. Though his body remained weakened, Yi Chen held his composure and declared with determination that the sneak attack of this day would not be forgotten. Chihao waved the spirit herb in his hand with deliberate mockery, replying that he would wait for Yi Chen to seek revenge. Turning to Su Xin, he then offered the herb to her with an air of flirtation. She accepted it with a smile and thanked him warmly. Side by side, the two prepared to leave. Chihao declared that they should return to Renyang Peak, and Su Xin gave her assent. Left alone, Yi Chen wiped the blood from his mouth with contempt. He stated coldly that he had already written down this debt and promised that the day would come when it would be repaid. In a scenic mountain setting, Yi Chen sat focusing before his true fire as it intensified. He shouted with concentration, commanding small bottles to emerge from the true fire. Observing the bottles, Yi Chen expressed satisfaction that his hard work had paid off. He drank from one bottle, deciding to test the effectiveness of the spirit jade liquid. Moments later, he floated in meditation, surrounded by his true fire. Suddenly, energy flared out from his body as Yi Chen achieved a breakthrough. Landing gracefully on the ground, he announced his advancement to the qi condensation's second layer. Holding one of the bottles with a smile, Yi Chen noted that spirit jade liquid refined by true fire and earth fire were not comparable in quality. Considering the spirit grasses needed for refining the liquid, Yi Chen remarked they were not difficult to find in the back mountains. However, the snow jade orchid presented a challenge. He wondered aloud about acquiring more snow jade orchid, acknowledging that while Wanbao Pavilion had a vast collection, the required spirit stones posed a problem. Holding his head in frustration, Yi Chen shouted about the difficulty of obtaining spirit stones and how everything was challenging without them. Just then, a voice interjected, challenging Yi Chen to fight at the Feng Yun stage. Recognizing the voice as Wei Yang of Tianyang Peak, Yi Chen responded with a devious smile, realizing this presented an opportunity to earn the spirit stones he needed. The scene shifted to the Feng Yun stage, where a crowd had already gathered. Voices rose among the spectators, each debating the outcome. One asked if Yi Chen stood a chance, while another scoffed, pointing out that Wei Yang was at the very peak of Qi condensation's 7th stage, a full small realm higher than Xiao Long. Even if it was only a small realm, the difference in power was said to be vast, making Yi Chen's victory unlikely. Yet some argued further. They reminded the crowd of Wei Yang's skill, pure ice qi, a power that alone made him dangerous. As Wei Yang stepped onto the stage, attention shifted. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He had arrived. Moments later, Yi Chen appeared as well, striding in with a cheerful wave, greeting the audience with exaggerated enthusiasm. His display, however, was met with silence, and the awkward pause forced him to cough into his hand. Wei Yang's expression hardened as he called out, reminding Yi Chen of the invitation he had dared refuse. Yi Chen scratched the back of his head, answering plainly that there were no rules forcing him to join Tianyang Peak, and that the choice was his alone. The retort only sharpened Wei Yang's glare. With a snarl, he declared that refusal would not go unpunished. At once, ice spread across the floor of the stage, chilling the air as pure ice qi manifested. Yi Chen recognized it instantly. Wei Yang's menacing smile grew as he mocked Yi Chen's awareness. Beneath him, the ice surged upward, locking Yi Chen's feet in place. He cursed as the cold invaded his body, pain seeping into his limbs. From the crowd, whispers carried sharp judgment. Some called him a fool for letting the ice consume him, others insisted fear had frozen him in place. Wei Yang sighed, watching his opponent struggle. The ice rose higher, climbing around Yi Chen's body until only his head remained free. Calm and unhurried, Wei Yang remarked that he had overestimated him. The crowd echoed the sentiment. Smiles broke out as they dismissed the fight, calling it dull. Yi Chen was already finished, they said, and nothing of substance had even happened yet. Wei Yang stood composed while Yi Chen strained within the icy prison, his voice breaking with pain as the frost closed in. Wei Yang surged forward, his palm blazing with qi, declaring the battle a waste of time. Yet within the prison of ice, Yi Chen's lips curved into a sudden smile. The sound of cracking spread across the stage as fissures split the frozen shell. Wei Yang froze mid-step, his eyes widening as the ice shattered piece by piece. At last, the final layer around Yi Chen's feet broke away. Disbelief swept through the crowd as they realized what they were seeing. Yi Chen had resisted pure ice qi. Wei Yang's shock left him open, and in that instant Yi Chen struck. His kick landed squarely, sending Wei Yang reeling, his body collapsing to his knees in agony. Drool mixed with his cry of pain as he shouted that it was impossible. Yi Chen's voice cut through the uproar, answering that nothing was impossible. He kicked again, then seized Wei Yang before he could fall further. With a mocking smile, he yanked him upward and slammed him down onto the stage. Wei Yang's face twisted with panic, as though he already knew what awaited him. His protest was cut short by a scream as Yi Chen lifted him again and smashed him against the ground with relentless force. Over and over, the stage shook beneath the brutal impacts. The audience recoiled, exclaiming at the savagery. Some muttered that if they were in Wei Yang's place, their bones would have been crushed beyond repair. Others whispered in disbelief, their thoughts churning. Wei Yang, at the peak of qi condensation's 7th stage, wielding pure ice qi, was being beaten so thoroughly he had not even managed to use his hidden techniques. Once more, Wei Yang was hurled upward only to be flung down, his cry breaking into a spray of blood. He lay sprawled on the ground, his voice faint as he muttered the word impossible before spitting crimson from his mouth. Yi Chen crouched beside him, his tone cutting deep as he addressed the once proud disciple. He reminded Wei Yang that even those who stood high above others would eventually find themselves reduced to such a pitiful, flustered state. Wei Yang, battered with broken teeth, remained slumped on the ground, gasping that he still possessed many unrevealed secrets. Yi Chen rummaged through Wei Yang's belongings, dismissing further words as he examined the treasures. While Wei Yang shed tears in anguish, Yi Chen smiled brightly upon opening the pouch, expressing delight at the abundance of valuables. Wei Yang's pained gasps intensified as Yi Chen continued his search. Not stopping there, he plucked a medal from Wei Yang's neck, slid a ring from his hand, and tugged another item from around his throat. The audience murmured in confusion at this unexpected looting. Their shock deepened as Yi Chen straightened, sighed in satisfaction, and declared his search complete. With a carefree tune, he strolled from the stage, humming as though nothing unusual had happened. The crowd could only watch in awkward silence as he departed. Before long, Yi Chen arrived at Wanbao Pavilion, a bag swinging at his side. He entered the door, announcing proudly that he carried more than 1,000 spirit stones. From within, the bald shopkeeper poked his head out, his grin wide as he welcomed the young man back. He called out cheerfully, offering to grant a discount in return for his business. Yi Chen narrowed his eyes inwardly at the profiteer's eagerness, but concealed the thought, keeping his expression calm. He asked instead whether the elder had snow jade orchid in stock. The shopkeeper beamed, boasting that Wanbao Pavilion had everything, including the orchid. Yet his cheer came with a price, 50 spirit stones for each stalk. Yi Chen's eyes widened, his voice rising in disbelief. The cost was far beyond what he expected. The shopkeeper played with his mustache, explaining that a discount could be offered, but only if Yi Chen purchased at least 50 orchids or more. Without hesitation, Yi Chen placed 2 sacks on the counter and asked the elder to appraise them. The shopkeeper eyed the weight of the bags with interest, remarking that Yi Chen hadn't come empty-handed. He even teased that the goods looked as though they had been taken from Wei Yang. Caught off guard, Yi Chen awkwardly asked if the elder truly knew about it, and the shopkeeper chuckled that such knowledge was only natural. Reaching into the bag, the shopkeeper pulled out an item and pointed out that Wei Yang had only just purchased it the day before. After tallying everything, he declared the total value to be nearly 900 spirit stones from the first bag, and with the second included, the worth came to 2,000 in all. Yi Chen instructed him to exchange everything for snow jade orchids. The shopkeeper paused, clearly surprised by the request, and asked why he needed so many. Yi Chen brushed the question aside with a casual remark about stewing and drinking them. Realizing Yi Chen did not wish to elaborate, the elder dropped the matter. He produced a box, set it on the counter, and said he would add 10 more as a bonus. Inside were 50 snow jade orchids. As the transaction concluded, Yi Chen asked where in the Hangua sect's back mountain the orchids were most abundant. The shopkeeper explained that none could be found there in large numbers. Though the plant was not particularly rare, it was essential for refining spirit jade liquid. For that reason, the sect restricted its growth, cultivating it exclusively in the Ling Cow Garden. The few that grew wild in the back mountain were scattered and scarce. Yi Chen acknowledged the explanation with understanding. It was no wonder the orchids were so difficult to find. Control of them rested firmly in the hands of the sect. At Tianyang Peak, Wei Yang lay on the ground, his body fully wrapped in bandages and unrecognizable. An elder pronounced that Yi Chen had been too ruthless. A disciple knelt nearby and vowed to fight Yi Chen someday, insisting he could not believe a first-stage qi condensation practitioner could overturn the sky. The elder, displeased, decided not to act rashly and resolved to let the disciple of old Jehang of Di Yang Peak test the waters first, calling Yi Chen strange. Meanwhile, inside a cave, Yi Chen controlled his flaring true fire with bottles placed at his side. He swung his hand, and more bottles emerged from the fire. Wiping his forehead, he announced that the refining was finally complete. He drank one bottle. The spirit jade liquid contained boundless spiritual power and carried the risk of bursting the danshan if a full bottle were consumed. Even disciples of the 7th stage would not dare to drink a whole bottle, yet Yi Chen proceeded to drink all 20 bottles directly. Seated in meditation, he relied on the divine sea's vast capacity to hold the boundless power from more than 20 bottles, noting that the liquid had been refined by true fire and that the conditions were blessed by the heavens. His qi surged, and with exertion he broke through. Observing his qi-infused hand, he confirmed that he had reached the 3rd stage of qi condensation. He stared at the sky with the mountains as a background, thinking that at the 3rd stage, he now had enough power to contend with someone at the foundation establishment stage. At that moment, a sudden movement streaked across the sky, prompting Yi Chen to ask aloud what it was. His confusion deepened when it vanished in the blink of an eye. A second swift movement then came to an abrupt halt, revealing the figure of Chu Xuan, the elder sister of Chu Ling. Mistaking her for Chu Ling, Yi Chen quickly ducked behind a tree and questioned why it was her instead. He began sneaking away, murmuring to himself that she was also from Hangua Sect and that he had to slip away quickly. But as he moved, his foot pressed down on a branch that snapped with a sharp crack. Cursing in frustration, Yi Chen dropped into a bush, while Chu Xuan's attention snapped toward the sound. Startled, Yi Chen's face twisted in fear as he muttered that he was doomed. Chu Xuan called out for him to come out. Yi Chen was instantly bound by her qi, forcing him to step forward and stammer a greeting to her as his senior. Enveloped in her qi, Chu Xuan demanded to know if he was a disciple of Hangua Sect. Still mistaking her for Chu Ling, Yi Chen wondered silently if she had truly forgotten him. Chu Xuan removed the qi binding him, causing him to fall on his backside, and demanded he answer her question. Yi Chen thought to himself that it had only been a few days and she had a really bad memory. Chu Xuan repeated her demand, asking once more if he was a disciple of Hangua Sect. Yi Chen muttered his confirmation, and in her hand appeared his jade tablet. With it, Chu Xuan questioned why he was creeping about the back mountain in the middle of the night. Yi Chen explained that he was there to pick spirit grasses. Unconvinced, Chu Xuan pressed him further, asking why he had run when he saw her moments ago. Chu Xuan stood with her arms crossed, her sharp gaze fixed on Yi Chen as he remained kneeling before her. She questioned whether she appeared so frightening. Yi Chen hurried to respond, fumbling for an excuse. He claimed he feared she might steal from him. Chu Xuan's brow arched in surprise at the notion, yet she let it pass and asked instead if he had seen anything flying by moments ago. Scrambling to his feet, Yi Chen nodded quickly and confirmed that he had. He described it as a streak of white light that had rushed past. Her eyes narrowed, keen and piercing, as she pressed further. What direction had it gone? Yi Chen instantly pointed northeast, though unease churned within him, silently urging her to leave before she remembered the past incident that could cost him dearly. Chu Xuan's expression grew grave at his answer. She drew out a talisman and raised it high. The charm flared with light, and glowing circles spun outward as she infused it with her qi. Her voice resonated through the projection, calling out to someone unseen. A voice answered in return, instructing her to maintain her post in the southwest and to stay clear of the area. Chu Xuan acknowledged with a firm reply, then lowered the talisman. Without hesitation, she folded her legs beneath her and sank into meditation. Her qi erupted violently, surging outward in waves that shook the ground around her. The oppressive force pressed against Yi Chen, making him clutch at his head with a groan. With a flick of her finger, Chu Xuan struck his temple with a thread of qi. The strain faded instantly. His breathing steadied, and as his eyes opened, he realized a barrier now surrounded them both. Confused, he muttered to himself, baffled at what had been erected. Chu Xuan did not waver, her focus fixed. She urged him to return to his senses and leave quickly, her voice calm yet unyielding. Yi Chen wasted no time. The moment Chu Xuan's words reached him, he turned and bolted. Chu Xuan, still seated within the barrier, glanced after his fleeing figure and murmured to herself, puzzled as to whether she truly appeared that frightening. Almost at once, another flash of movement darted out from the forest. A figure descended swiftly, landing gracefully before her. It was Chu Ling. As she drew closer, she suddenly paused. A faint trace lingered in the air, and she murmured that the scent felt strangely familiar. As Chu Ling approached, Chu Xuan inquired why she had emerged from seclusion so soon. Chu Ling explained that with such significant events occurring, she couldn't remain inactive. Chu Ling then examined the barrier, asking whether it could trap their target. Chu Xuan confirmed the escape was larger than usual. Chu Ling smiled, mentioning senior brother Zhang and others were surrounding it, noting the increasing frequency of escapes and uncertainty about future containment. After thoughtful consideration, Chu Ling sat beside her sister and offered assistance. Chu Xuan suddenly recalled meeting a strange guy. Chu Ling asked about his characteristics, but Chu Xuan struggled to describe him, eventually dismissing the topic. Meanwhile, far from them, Yi Chen raced through the mountains, his breath ragged. Relief poured through him as he repeated to himself how close he had come to disaster. Inwardly, he debated whether Chu Xuan remembered their encounter or if they were different people. Yet even as he ran, unease gnawed at his thoughts. He considered the improbability of such resemblance in the world. If the woman from that night was indeed in Hangua Sect, he realized he would have to leave. If merely a look-alike, he concluded he needn't worry. In a location with dry branches, a voice insisted he hadn't entered Spirit Mountain, only standing outside its gate. 4 disciples surrounded a crouching kid, with one addressing him as a little bastard who lied about staying at the hill's bottom and instead came to steal. They commanded him to learn his place, addressing him as Hua, who was the little kid from the garden. Hua maintained he hadn't climbed up, merely watching from the gate. A disciple raised his palm, declaring Hua continued arguing and asked for a beating. As the disciple prepared to strike, a hand stopped his arm. Yi Chen stated they couldn't absorb the essence of heaven and earth, yet bullied a child who couldn't cultivate, declaring they were the ones seeking death. Another disciple recognized Yi Chen with surprise. Yi Chen twisted the disciple's arm, challenging him to fight if he had courage. The other disciple claimed Hua had broken the rules first. The now kneeling disciple clutched his arm, explaining that non-disciples of Hangua Sect were forbidden from entering the sect's Spirit Mountain, a long-standing rule. He added that the brat Hua constantly sneaked up there, questioning if he intended to steal. Yi Chen whispered to Hua that he knew Hangua Sect enforced such rules. Hua responded tearfully that he hadn't entered, insisting he'd only stood outside the gate while they dragged him in. The second disciple cracked his knuckles, accusing Hua of lying. The first disciple drew his sword, threatening to break Hua's leg. Yi Chen swung his sword, daring them to try hitting the child. The first disciple wore a smug expression, announcing that Yi Chen was going to bully people with his strength. The second disciple questioned if Yi Chen intended to bully the weak in broad daylight. Unfazed, Yi Chen smiled as he raised his sword, questioning if they considered his actions bullying. He slammed his sword against the disciples' weapons, declaring that if they insisted on calling it bullying, then he would indeed bully them that day. The first disciple was slammed to the ground from the impact, crying out in pain, though he maintained a calculating smile. The disciples shouted that Yi Chen was attempting murder. Yi Chen pointed his sword at them, stating that since they accused him of murder, he would kill them first. They began acting and approached him, with one remarking that senior sister Su had been right about Yi Chen's serious attitude toward killing. Another questioned if he dared commit murder in broad daylight, while a third suggested they could talk things out instead of using force. Yi Chen swung his sword, forcing them to distance themselves as he commanded them to scram. A voice from behind interjected, reminding them that sect rules forbade fights between disciples outside the Fengyun stage. One of the disciples addressed the newcomer as Senior Brother Yin, requesting justice. They pointed at Yi Chen, explaining to Senior Brother Yin that Yi Chen had disregarded sect rules and couldn't be allowed to go unpunished. They accused Yi Chen of arbitrarily bullying fellow disciples in broad daylight, calling his actions detestable. Yin instructed Yi Chen to accompany him to the disciplinary hall. Yi Chen agreed, stating he dared to take responsibility for his actions. Hua stopped him, insisting everything was his fault. Elder Zhang Feng offered to take the punishment instead, explaining that the young man was ignorant and requesting leniency. Yin addressed Zhang Fengnian, reminding him that he had been demoted to the bottom of the hill and should understand the rules, advising him not to bring trouble upon himself. Zhang Feng continued pleading, appealing to Yin for the sake of their former relationship. Yi Chen called to the elder with a smile, instructing him to take Hua home and assuring him that he was fine. The scene shifted to the Jai Lu Hall, where Yi Chen stood upon the punishment platform. He reflected that the day's events were not coincidental but a deliberate plot to frame him. Across from him, Yin smiled with malice, and Yi Chen returned the smile knowingly, continuing his thought that this was simply a trap. When Yin pointed at his jade tablet, Yi Chen recognized it as one belonging to Di Yang Peak. Yin explained that his master was in closed-door training, so he would preside over the matter himself. With a smile, he asked whether Yi Chen admitted to arbitrarily injuring other disciples. In response, Yi Chen countered that if Yin intended to condemn someone, there was no need for a pretext. Yin pressed further, asking if this meant Yi Chen admitted guilt, and with a wicked smile, he remarked that pleading guilty would make the process easier. Turning his back on Yi Chen, he lifted his hand toward a disciple, who questioned whether he was requesting a flame whip. In reply, Yin cited Article 9 of the Sect's rules, declaring that arbitrarily injuring fellow disciples deserved immediate punishment by flame whip. As Yi Chen's clothes were removed, nearby disciples remarked that he would now suffer. Bound tightly to the punishment platform, they questioned how many lashes he could endure. Meanwhile, Yin smiled in anticipation as he grasped the whip, advising Yi Chen to shout if the pain became unbearable. Yi Chen closed his eyes, instructing him instead to stop speaking nonsense and simply begin. Yin responded with a dismissive sound and struck, lashing him again and again. Yi Chen gritted his teeth, blood filling his mouth as he let out a strained grunt under the lashes. His body quickly grew wounded, yet Yin only continued, commenting on his strong physique. With a sadistic expression, Yin increased his strength and whipped Yi Chen with even greater force, striking him relentlessly. The gathered disciples whispered among themselves, their words sharp with disdain. Some claimed that Yi Chen had brought this punishment upon himself by injuring fellow disciples, insisting he could not blame anyone else. Others sneered in satisfaction, thinking that opposing Di Yang Peak would only ever lead to such an end. On the platform, Yin laughed as he lashed out again and again, the flame whip cracking against Yi Chen's flesh. Blood welled and wounds split open, yet Yi Chen remained silent, his body enduring each strike without yielding a sound. Yin's expression twisted darker as he leaned forward, licking the blood from his face with cruel delight. He taunted Yi Chen, demanding to see how long he could bear it. Yi Chen stayed quiet as Yin persisted with the whipping, noting internally that even a foundation establishment stage cultivator couldn't withstand 100 lashes from a flame whip, let alone a chi condensation stage cultivator. Yin grew anxious while continuing his assault, realizing Yi Chen had endured 100 lashes without making a sound, calling him a demon. The watching disciples murmured in disbelief, counting the lashes and exclaiming that Yi Chen hadn't died after receiving 108 whips, questioning if his body was made of flesh. As another lash struck Yi Chen, the onlookers remarked that he had not made a single sound. Their words carried through the hall as Yin, both angry and exhausted, finally ordered that Yi Chen be released, his breath coming in ragged bursts. The chains clanked heavily as they were undone, marking the end of the punishment. Once freed, Yi Chen asked if he could go. Though bloodied, he smiled, and Yin, still catching his breath, replied that he could leave. Before departing, Yi Chen turned his gaze on the first disciple from earlier. The bloodlust in his stare caused the disciple to tremble, and that oppressive feeling lingered even as Yi Chen's back disappeared through the hall's exit. Yi Chen staggered out of the hall, clutching his side with each labored breath. From behind, Elder Zhang called out to him, his voice carrying guilt. Turning back with a weary smile, Yi Chen forced out that his skin was thick and he would not die. But before he could finish, his strength failed and his body gave way as he collapsed heavily to the ground. Elder Zhang hurried to his side, his voice soft with sympathy as he urged the boy to go home. Inwardly, Yi Chen admitted that Elder Zhang was right that one must be patient, yet he questioned whether the weak should simply endure being bullied. He resolved instead to take the harder road, and for all the pain they had received, he would make their tormentors pay 100-fold in the future. Upon returning to the Hangua Sect's spiritual garden, Yi Chen lay on a bed, his body wrapped in bandages and his eyes closed. When they opened again, they mirrored the promise of his revenge, declaring with resoluteness that his enemies should wait, for his retribution would come. Inside the house in the spiritual herb garden, Yi Chen sat cross-legged on the bed, his form still and focused as he practiced the fierce, desolate body refining technique. The unexpected mystery of the method occupied his mind, the realization that enduring beatings could actively aid in body refinement becoming a solid fact. Across his shoulder and body, the wounds inflicted by the fire whip were gradually healing, the flesh knitting itself back together with a visible speed that prompted a soft exclamation of awe at the overwhelming power of the body refining technique. He rose to his feet and tested his improved physical condition by throwing a forceful punch into the empty air before him. The sound of Elder Zhang's voice interrupted Yi Chen's movements. The elder stood staring at him with an expression of pure shock, pointing out that even with the aid of spirit medicine, a fire whip injury should have taken a minimum of half a month to recover. He expressed utter disbelief that after only one night, Yi Chen's injury had already healed completely. Yi Chen responded with a soft smile, reminding the elder of his inherently tough constitution. Elder Zhang stepped forward and held Yi Chen's hand, his own grip conveying a deep sense of relief. The elder then produced a small pouch, his expression turning serious as he instructed Yi Chen to keep the item safe. A flicker of curiosity passed over Yi Chen's features as he accepted the pouch. Upon seeing the heavenly spirit talisman inside, he was genuinely surprised, recognizing it as one of the elder's most treasured possessions. Understanding its immense value, Yi Chen immediately moved to decline the gift, stating it was far too valuable for him to accept. Elder Zhang stopped him, explaining with firm clarity that the talisman required true qi to activate and was therefore useless to someone like himself who lacked it. Yi Chen considered the talisman's significance as one of the 3 major treasures of the Hangua sect, capable of confining a cultivator's true qi for a significant period, and felt a wave of gratitude for the elder's generosity, knowing the man had endured great humiliation to keep it safe. He bowed deeply to the elder, who told him not to stand on ceremony. The two of them moved outside to stand together under the night sky, gazing up at the moon. Elder Zhang offered words of encouragement, urging Yi Chen to do his best in the times to come. Yi Chen promised to always remember the elder's teachings. The following morning, as Yi Chen prepared to depart, Elder Zhang called out to him. Hua begged him not to go, insisting that the people he was facing were truly evil. Yi Chen reassured them both that he would be fine. As he finally departed, Elder Zhang waved and told him to be cautious. Meanwhile, in the back mountains of the Hangua sect, a cloaked figure observed the scene from a high tree branch, watching an unsuspecting disciple walk the path below. The cloaked figure allowed a smile to form, privately stating that since these people liked to play dirty, he would play with them too. He stood on the branch and announced his arrival in a voice that was both loud and yet directed, declaring his presence to the disciples of the Diyang Peak. Below, a disciple from that very peak was ordering other disciples to leave, arrogantly claiming that a piece of spiritual grass belonged solely to his peak. Just as he felt proud of successfully driving them away, a fast movement from behind made him spin around to demand the identity of the intruder. Before he could complete his turn, the cloaked figure struck him hard on the head. The figure then laughed softly, removed his hood to reveal himself as Yi Chen, and counted the unconscious disciple as his first victim. He crouched over the unconscious disciple and spoke aloud about checking the body for valuables. After a thorough search of the disciple's entire person, Yi Chen remarked upon finding some good loot. Standing up, he looked down at the now-naked disciple and sighed, commenting on the menial nature of the task. He then delivered a sharp kick to the disciple's rear, sending the body flying into a nearby bush. Yi Chen declared it was time to move on to the next target. Shouts soon echoed through the mountain air as two different disciples approached the scene. One exclaimed in shock at the sight before them, while the other commented on both the cruelty and the efficiency of the robbery. Looking at the naked and bound disciple, they continued speaking, stating that he deserved his fate and questioning whether Diang Peak would dare to bully others again. Soon after, another shout rang out as the same pair of disciples came across yet another naked disciple, one of them stammering in disbelief that there was one more. Over the following hours, multiple cries of pain filled the air continuously as day gradually turned to night. That same pair of disciples, upon seeing another victim from Diang Peak, wondered aloud what was happening and speculated if the work was being done by disciples from the other two peaks. One of them dismissed Yi Chen as a possible suspect, noting he had been severely beaten the previous day and likely could not even stand. Meanwhile, under the moon above Diang Peak, Zhehang roared with fury, demanding to know who was responsible for the attacks. A disciple kneeling beside him reported that no one knew the culprit's identity, as all the senior disciples had already been attacked upon their arrival back at the peak. This disciple suggested Yi Chen as a possible culprit, but Zhehang scoffed at the idea, pointing out that after receiving over 100 strikes from the fire whip, Yi Chen was lucky to be alive and certainly could not even stand. The disciple agreed, admitting he hadn't seen Yi Chen that day. He then wondered if the attackers were from Tian Yang or Ren Yang peaks, to which Zhehang ordered an investigation, vowing to make the perpetrators pay. Back at the spiritual herb garden, multiple full sacks thudded heavily onto the ground as Yi Chen celebrated his haul. Before him lay numerous items: bottles of jade spirit liquid, piles of spirit grass, and heaps of spirit stones. He exclaimed that the resources were enough to help him break through to the 4th level. He picked up one of the bottles and prepared to advance his cultivation. Surrounded by gathering qi, he meditated deeply until a breakthrough occurred. He opened his eyes and announced his success in reaching the qi condensation 4th stage. He glanced out the window at the approaching dawn and noted it was time to resume his work. In the back mountains, Yi Chen held a stick. Wearing his cloak, he stood atop a cliff, identifying the path below as the only route to the demon beast forest. He retrieved a detailed mask, smiled as he put it on, and then jumped off the cliff, calling out his departure. Elsewhere in the mountains, Yi Chen hid behind a large rock, observing two passing disciples. He noted they were not from Diang Peak and privately remarked that they should consider themselves lucky. Suddenly, his attention fixed on a specific individual, Xiuming. He reflected that while Zhehang was the true culprit, Xiuming was merely a subordinate who followed orders, yet the fact remained that Xiuming had taken visible pleasure in beating up Hua. He warned the boy that meddling with others would lead to consequences, regardless of his identity. Meanwhile, presumably Xiuming inquired of another disciple about the cause of the problem at the back mountain from the previous day. The other disciple suggested it must have been the work of those from the other two peaks. Yi Chen, hidden behind a rock, observed as the first disciple agreed with the assessment, and the second disciple elaborated on the nature of the ongoing conflict between the three main peaks. Just as Yi Chen prepared to act, Xiuming noticed a group of other disciples approaching and asked if they were heading to the demon beast forest. Those disciples confirmed their intent to hunt the blood spider. Yi Chen, still concealed, registered the arrival of more individuals and resolved to proceed with his plan. A purple-robed individual, likely named Yang, commented on the inherent danger of the blood spider and formally proposed that the groups join forces for the hunt. Suddenly, a small black object was thrown into the midst of the group. Yang reacted instantly by slashing at the object with his weapon, triggering an immediate explosion that filled the entire area with a thick, obscuring smoke. A coughing disciple demanded that the hidden figure reveal themselves. A swift stick then struck one of the disciples squarely on the head. The purple-robed youth cursed aloud upon spotting a blurred figure moving within the smoke and unleashed a chi-infused palm strike, ordering the figure to show itself. Another disciple was struck by his attack, and the purple-robed youth recognized him as a brother from his peak, looking deeply frustrated. Yi Chen then struck the purple-robed youth from behind. Seeing the youth groaning on the ground, Yi Chen noted the formidable strength of a cultivator at the peak of the Qi condensation's 6th stage, as the youth had not immediately fainted from the stick blow. Yi Chen struck him once more, finally sending him fully to the ground. More shouts came from within the dissipating smoke. Xiuming emerged from the haze, demanding to know who was hiding, but before he could react further, Yi Chen punched him forcefully in the abdomen. As Xiuming doubled over, he saw the cloaked figure swing into his view and strike his head, the impact leaving him drooling with snot. The smoke slowly cleared to reveal the cloaked Yi Chen standing while holding one end of a chain, with the group of shackled disciples at the other end. Yi Chen chuckled softly and expressed his intent to continue hunting due to the pleasant weather. Soon, more shouts echoed from another part of the back mountains. Later, Yi Chen, now without his cloak, admitted to himself that he felt exhaustion setting in and that it was nearly time to conclude his activities. In the distance, 2 streaks of light were seen approaching, their presence sparking a wave of excitement in Yi Chen. As the 2 lights drew closer, he recognized them as practitioners of the Foundation establishment stage. He smiled to himself and declared that he had caught 2 significant targets. The 2 cultivators, Song Yu and Wang Heng, stood prepared as they landed on the back of the mountains. Yi Chen, dressed in his dark cloak and clutching a round object, judged that they were somewhat weaker than expected and that success was within reach. He hurled the object directly toward them. Song Yu reacted by slashing at the object with his weapon, but the object detonated into a cloud of thick smoke upon impact. Song Yu was struck by something within the smoke and demanded to know who had attacked them. Wang Heng was also hit in the back by an unseen projectile. Both cultivators began to appear dizzy, with Song Yu asking Wang Heng if he felt dizzy, to which Wang Heng could only weakly reply that he did, a little. Yi Chen observed their subsequent collapse and reflected that the poisoned needles acquired from the humpbacked old man were truly effective. However, he also thought it was a waste to use such potent poison needles in this particular situation. Shortly afterward, Song Yu and Wang Heng lay naked and unconscious on the ground, their possessions systematically placed into sacks. Yi Chen stated aloud that they should not blame him for their predicament, and if they wanted to assign blame, they should blame their master. An hour passed before distant shouts echoed down from the mountain path. 2 arriving disciples, upon discovering the line of nude peers, exclaimed in shocked unison over the bizarre scene. They continued to express their disbelief, marveling at the sheer scale of the robbery, noting that everyone had been robbed and that even all their clothes had been taken, concluding that the unknown assailant was very strange indeed. Elsewhere, Jehang stood seething with a rage that made him pant heavily. There, at the summit of Dai Yang Peak, he roared into the open air, demanding to know who on earth had committed this act. Within a dimly lit room illuminated by a single candle, a low voice chuckled over the day's income, which was twice that of the previous day. Yi Chen mused to himself that the wealth of those in the condensed Qi realm truly paled in comparison to that of disciples who had reached the Foundation establishment stage. He held a book titled Weapon Refinement Art, contemplating that it was truly precious. While wearing a peculiar expression, he considered that although the Heaven's Breaker sword was easy to wield, its significant weight drastically slowed his speed. He concluded that it was time to refine a new weapon, reasoning that if he were to discard the heavy sword in battle, his speed would increase greatly. And then, armed with a more powerful weapon, he would become even stronger. Inside a secluded cave, Yi Chen surrounded multiple discarded weapons with his true fire, reasoning that the refining apparatus required intense heat, which was perfectly suited for his abilities. He made a specific gesture, deciding to merge these spiritual tools into a single furnace. He then directed his true fire with focused intent, aiming to extract and purify the most essential components from the mass of metal. The true fire focused into a single, intense point. He announced that the first step was complete, resulting in a single piece of glowing red iron fused from the purified essence of the weapons. This material served as an excellent base for a strong new weapon. Yi Chen exhaled softly. He observed that within the fire, the sword had already taken on its basic form. 4 days later, inside the same cave, the sword continued to be refined within the unwavering true fire. Yi Chen finally took the finished blade, smiled with satisfaction, and stated that it was finally complete. He dripped his own blood onto the flat of the sword to seal it, raised the new weapon, and swung it with blinding speed, the strike carving a deep crater into the stone floor below. He named the sword Red Heaven. His 2 swords, the new and the old, rested side by side beside him as he declared that the next day they would continue hunting, as there was still money to be made. Returning to the back mountains, Yi Chen decided to stop after finishing this one task. He stood motionless among the foliage, thinking that while his plan was perfect, no defense was impervious to everything. Before him, 3 unsuspecting disciples moved in unison. Yi Chen watched them, thinking to himself that if there was an unexpected mistake, it would be considered as self-harm. He then smiled as he considered that teaming up just to pick spirit grass meant Diang Peak's disciples had learned to be clever, as they were fearful of an ambush from behind. Looking confident, Yi Chen thought that even if they were in groups of 3 or 5, with his current strength, he could knock them all down. However, he also recognized that this wasn't a valley, so if he failed to eliminate them all at once, it would cause trouble and provoke more people, which was the worst-case scenario. Suddenly, Yi Chen noticed a familiar chin and recognized Xiao Long. With his trusty wooden staff in hand, Yi Chen's lips twisted into a grim smile as he remarked that since Xiao Long even dared to come alone, he was brave, so he would beat him down. But before he could take action, Yi Chen suddenly noticed Xiao Long swinging his staff. Silence hung heavy in the following moment when Xiao Long slammed his weapon into the unsuspecting disciple who was clutching a sprig of spirit grass, which caused birds to fly off from the impact as Xiao Long stood over the sprawled disciple. Watching the unexpected turn of events, Yi Chen exclaimed in surprise. Xiao Long then snarled as he delivered another whack, declaring that he would see Tian Yang Peak try to mess with their Diang Peak. Yi Chen was at a loss, inwardly thinking that because of the 2 incidents of beating up their students, Diang Peak's Zheheng thought it was Tian Yang Peak's doing. He then realized why Diang Peak's disciples had come in a team that day. As the shouts continued, Yi Chen understood that they weren't there for spirit grass. Their real intention was to knock out the other disciples. When the trio boasted about disabling rivals from Tian Yang and Ren Yang Peaks, Yi Chen exclaimed that this could no longer be blamed on him. From a hilltop overlooking the sect, he observed in contemplation that from then on, the Hangua sect's back mountain would not be calm anymore. He reasoned that Diang Peak would think Tian Yang and Ren Yang Peaks had attacked them, while Tian Yang would blame Ren Yang, and Ren Yang would blame Tian Yang, making it difficult to say who was the first to have hit the other's disciples. Faced with this tangled situation, Yi Chen thought in frustration how troublesome it was. Afterward, Yi Chen went to Wanbao Pavilion. Inside, the shopkeeper was absorbed in a suspicious-looking book and continued reading even as Yi Chen entered the pavilion. At last, the shopkeeper lifted his gaze and stared at him with suspicion, demanding to know why he was wearing a black robe in the daytime. Startled, Yi Chen wondered how the man could recognize him despite his disguise. The shopkeeper smirked, arms crossed, and remarked that after enduring more than 100 fire whips, Yi Chen had managed to get out of bed so soon, calling his bones hard. Shocked, Yi Chen questioned how the old man even knew about his whipping. The shopkeeper retorted that it was nonsense to ask, since everyone in the outer sect knew of it. Yi Chen could only fall silent at that. Then he placed a pouch on the table and demanded ice jade orchid. The shopkeeper, startled, asked where he had obtained 6,000 spirit stones. Yi Chen replied that he had picked them up, to which the shopkeeper dismissed the excuse by saying he had picked up too much. Receiving the box, Yi Chen remarked that he was simply lucky, while the shopkeeper retorted that next time Yi Chen should tell him so he could pick up some too. Yi Chen then asked if the library of Hangua Sect was open to outer disciples. The shopkeeper explained that on the last day of each month, it would be open to them only for that day. As Yi Chen walked toward the door, he stated that he would come in 3 days. Watching him leave, the shopkeeper smiled with calculation, inwardly judging the boy to be a freak. Inside the spiritual herb garden, Yi Chen controlled his true fire, certain that he would have no problem refining the ice jade orchids into spirit jade liquid and breaking through to the 5th stage of qi condensation. Within Tianyang Peak, Zhang Laodao slammed his table in fury, cursing that others were pushing them too hard. He declared that from that day forward, they must strictly guard against the disciples of Diyang Peak and Rinyang Peak, insisting that the disciples of Tianyang Peak were not pushovers. Meanwhile, on Rinyang Peak, Zhen Ren ordered his followers to find out who was responsible. With fierce eyes, he demanded that once identified, they must strike back. In the back mountains of the Hangua Sect, 2 disciples were collecting spiritual herbs when one suddenly noticed something behind them. 2 figures pounced with sticks, striking as they shouted for the boys to take their blows. Cries of pain echoed through the back mountains. Other disciples who witnessed the ambush exclaimed that the 3 main peaks were now going to be thrown into chaos. Since the trouble had begun, they lamented, no one could casually go into the back mountain, never knowing when they might be struck down. Some muttered that the attackers could knock out whomever they wished, so long as they themselves were spared. Deeper in the mountains, angry shouts rang out. One challenged the disciples of Tianyang Peak to meet him at Fengyan Stage. Another, calling himself Yuekang of Rinyang Peak, declared that he would wait there as well. A third voice, identifying Xiao Long of Diyang Peak, vowed he would not let go even if it meant death. Others urged them to stop wasting words and come on stage to fight. Watching from above, Chu Xuan remarked that such a grand occasion was likely the first since the founding of the Hangua Sect. Beside her, Chu Ling wondered why the 3 main peaks were so carelessly turning against each other. As they continued observing the competing disciples at Fengyan Stage, Chu Xuan explained that the conflict had been building for a long time, and even without this incident, they would have clashed sooner or later. Chu Ling laughed, amused that someone had come up with the idea of striking others in secret. At that moment, Yi Chen suddenly sneezed. While still controlling his true fire, he wondered why he felt a sudden chill. Later that night, the door creaked open. The next day, stepping outside at last, Yi Chen exhaled in exhaustion, relieved that he had finally succeeded. After 2 days and 3 nights, Yi Chen had fully refined hundreds of bottles of spirit jade liquid, his manipulation of fire and refinement process becoming increasingly advanced. The injured giant eagle suddenly approached him. Yi Chen petted its head while asking if it was hungry, to which the eagle, larger than himself, responded with calls. He then took out some meat and fed the eagle, remarking that its injury had yet to fully recover. Producing a bottle, he observed it would take at least a month for the eagle to fly again. He then directed the bottle's contents onto the eagle's body, announcing his intention to help. Concentrating his qi into his hand, Yi Chen directed it into the eagle's body despite its fierce look, instructing it not to be afraid as he would heal it. As the bandages slowly removed themselves, the eagle flew above him, and Yi Chen assured it that everything would be fine by the next day. Inside the small hut within the spiritual herb garden, Yi Chen sat before the sleeping Hua, deep in thought. He observed that the child suffered from a congenitally blocked spiritual aperture, with several major channels still unopened. Without developed meridians, and with such a physique, Yi Chen reflected, Hua would never become a cultivator without a stroke of extraordinary luck. As Yi Chen enveloped the boy in his qi, he considered how, under normal circumstances, a person's meridians must be unobstructed to allow the spiritual aperture, the gateway to the meridians, to open. Only then could one attract the spiritual chi of heaven and earth into the body and become a true cultivator. But for someone like Hua, born with blocked meridians, the only path to cultivation required external intervention, someone powerful enough to open the meridians for him. With focused determination, Yi Chen concentrated his chi into his hand. He exhaled slowly, steadying himself, and urged the boy to hold on, believing that this very moment might alter Hua's destiny. As the energy flowed into Hua, the boy's body levitated slightly, suspended within the shimmering aura of Yi Chen's chi. Yi Chen worked meticulously, guiding his energy to reshape and unblock the dormant pathways within the child. Finally, as the procedure concluded, Yi Chen exhaled deeply and wiped the sweat from his brow. He exclaimed that heaven had indeed blessed this boy. The great eagle soared freely in the sky, while Yi Chen prepared something on the table outside. The wooden door cracked open, and Elder Zhang stepped out, remarking that the young man had risen early. Yi Chen, holding a plate with 3 pork buns, explained that he had been unable to sleep and had risen ahead of time. Elder Zhang praised his diligence, calling it rare to see such effort, while Yi Chen smiled in response and replied with modesty. Suddenly, Hua shouted loudly, calling out to his grandfather. His body became surrounded by qi as he exclaimed in confusion, asking what was happening to him and describing the warm current flowing through his body. Elder Zhang turned in surprise, his eyes widening as he recognized it to be spirit qi. Rushing over to check his grandson, he questioned how such a thing had occurred. Hua stammered in disbelief, asking if he could truly cultivate. Elder Zhang lifted him up with joy, confirming excitedly that he indeed could. Yi Chen stepped forward and patted Hua on the shoulder, declaring that from this day onward, he was a cultivator. Hua's face lit up with an even brighter smile as he shouted in delight. The great eagle joined in the celebration, and Hua shouted again, proclaiming to the great eagle that he was now a cultivator and could protect it in the future. Looking on with radiant joy beside Yi Chen, Elder Zhang declared with heartfelt emotion that heaven truly had eyes. But as the others continued to celebrate, Yi Chen lowered his gaze in silence. His thoughts weighed heavily, questioning whether this path was truly good for Hua. He reflected that the journey of cultivation was far more difficult than that of an ordinary man. Though cultivation promised a longer lifespan, it also carried with it loneliness and cruelty. He wondered if he had done right or wrong in changing Hua's fate so suddenly. Perhaps, when the boy truly understood the hardships of cultivation, he would realize that the life of an ordinary man was far more free and easy than that of a cultivator. Moments later, when Yi Chen returned to the sect, the disciples nearby cried out in disbelief. They had witnessed him endure more than 100 strikes of the fire whip, yet he now appeared completely unharmed. Shocked voices spread among them, calling him a monster, astonished that not a single scar remained on his body and remarking on how little time had passed since the punishment. Even so, their attention soon shifted. Urgency rippled through the crowd as word spread that the disciples of Renyang Peak and Tianyang Peak were once again clashing on the Fengyun stage. Excited voices rose that this time, even disciples of the Foundation establishment stage had joined the fray, and that the disciples of Diang Peak had gone to participate as well. As they walked past him, he let out a soft laugh upon realizing that not a single disciple remained behind. Everyone had gone to see the commotion. He continued on, remarking to himself that such stillness was rare and welcome. He made his way into the sect's library. Upon arrival, he bowed in greeting to the elder who oversaw the entrance. The elder instructed him to step inside and leave his jade tablet, and Yi Chen responded respectfully before complying. Lifting his gaze, he looked up at the seemingly endless shelves that stretched into the heights above. He let out a breath as he took in the vast collection. 3 hours later, after returning a book, he exhaled again, noting that the profound arts appeared to be stored on the upper levels. Examining the scroll in his hand, he reflected on the limits of his current status. At Hangua Sect, outer sect disciples were permitted to enter only the first floor of the library. As for the upper floors, with his current qualifications, he had no right to ascend. A sudden loud voice rang out, breaking Yi Chen's focus as someone shouted, calling out to old man Huangxi and asking if he was missed. Another voice answered sharply, warning the speaker that if he stole something again, he would be beaten. Eavesdropping as he listened in, Yi Chen looked flabbergasted and wondered what that person had eaten to grow so large. The fat guy retorted indignantly, questioning the accusation and insisting he was not that kind of person. The other voice roared back, telling him to get out. As Yi Chen walked past, still reading, he remarked with what seemed like sarcasm that Hangyu truly had many talented people. Just as those words left his mouth, the fat guy suddenly turned his attention toward him. Rubbing his chin thoughtfully, the boy stared and asked why he had never seen him before. Yi Chen replied in a blank tone that he was new. The boy gave a knowing sound, as though confirming his suspicion, and began to leave. Yi Chen exhaled in relief. Yet just as he was leaving, the fat kid halted abruptly. His gaze swung back to Yi Chen, and he narrowed his eyes with curiosity. Yi Chen shifted uncomfortably as the fat kid stepped closer, sniffing eagerly around him, moving left and right. Suddenly, the boy's eyes lit up with excitement, and he exclaimed that Yi Chen possessed true fire. Yi Chen's expression grew troubled. The fat kid darted glances in every direction, lowering his voice to ask if it was true. Yi Chen's body stiffened with nervousness, and the thought surfaced within him that neither the first seat of the three main peaks nor Zhou Dafu, the caretaker of the weapon pavilion, had managed to notice, yet this chubby youth in front of him had somehow sniffed it out. Forcing a strained explanation, he insisted that true fire was far too precious and that an outer disciple like himself could not possibly have it. The fat kid refused to believe him, claiming that he could smell it clearly. Yi Chen countered that he must have sniffed wrong. The boy barked back that it was impossible, threatening to find someone else to test it. He spun around abruptly and called out to old man Huang, declaring that this kid possessed true, only for Yi Chen to rush forward and clamp a hand over his mouth, muffling the words. With his palm still pressed against the boy's cheek, Yi Chen muttered in frustration that the little fatty was full of wicked ideas and that all his bulk must have been grown from them. The fat kid pried his hand away, triumphantly declaring that this proved his claim. Yi Chen exhaled sharply and, unable to deny it further, conceded with irritation. Elder Huang approached at that moment, demanding to know what the shouting was about. The fat kid scrambled to reply that he was merely practicing his voice. Elder Huang gave him a bored look, asking if he had nothing better to do, before warning him to be quiet. As the elder turned to leave, he suddenly paused and asked what the boy had meant earlier about true something. Yi Chen quickly tried to appear innocent, while the fat kid, with annoyance, changed his words and claimed he had meant true qi. Elder Huang struck him across the head, cursing at his nonsense. The boy yelped in pain, while Elder Huang scolded that everyone in Hangua Sect had true qi and there was nothing to make a fuss over, before strolling away. The fat kid sat on the ground, wiping his cheek and cursing the old man under his breath, vowing revenge. Then, glancing up, he noticed Yi Chen attempting to slip away quietly. He immediately shouted after him, forbidding him to leave. Yi Chen turned back reluctantly, asking what else the boy wanted. The fat kid grabbed hold of his leg, begging him to refine a treasure with his true fire. Yi Chen refused flatly, claiming he had no time, but the boy instantly threatened to call for old man Huang again. Yi Chen's expression drained of color, and he quickly relented, blurting out that he would help. Before committing, he laid down his terms, saying he would refine only one treasure and that the boy must swear to never reveal his true fire to anyone. The fat kid chuckled slyly and assured him that his mouth was tightly sealed. Yi Chen then added another condition. He would not refine for free, demanding 500 spirit stones as payment. Without hesitation, the fat kid accepted the deal. Both of them soon stood before an iron club impaled in the ground, their eyes fixed on the weapon. The fat kid called attention to it, declaring that there was a trace of black qi lingering on its surface. Yi Chen studied it and questioned what it was. The fat kid explained that the wolf's teeth club still carried the evil thoughts of its previous owner, and because of that, it refused to acknowledge him as its master. At that, Yi Chen echoed the words in surprise, his gaze steady on the weapon. His mind turned over the realization that the evil thoughts accumulated over a lifetime were still clinging to the club. He measured what that implied. The strength of the original owner must have been formidable, and the wolf's teeth club itself was certainly no ordinary weapon. Breaking his contemplation, he asked if true fire could truly refine it. The fat kid, answering without hesitation, affirmed it with certainty, explaining that all evil thoughts belonged to the yin, and nothing was more feared by yin than a force of pure yang. True fire, born from heaven and earth, was the perfect counter. With that settled, they decided to begin at once. Soon after, Yi Chen released his true fire, enveloping the club in its blaze. The fat boy watched eagerly, marveling at the sight, calling the flames extraordinary and declaring that they would surely refine the black chi. As wisps of the evil aura began to dissipate, he crowed triumphantly that it was happening just as he had said. Yi Chen kept his focus, carefully controlling the true fire while noting that the evil thoughts were deeply rooted and would take time to fully cleanse. The boy reassured him with ease that he had plenty of time to wait. As the refining continued, the boy casually introduced himself, saying his name was Bear 2. Yi Chen repeated the name with surprise, and the boy explained that he was the second child of his family, so his father had named him Bear 2. Yi Chen asked then about his elder brother's name, and the boy answered that it was Big Bear. Yi Chen pressed further, asking if the youngest sibling was named Bear 3, but Bear 2 replied that he had no younger brother. As the refinement continued, Bear 2 watched the club intently, announcing that they were almost finished. When the last aura of evil thoughts finally dissipated, Bear 2 exclaimed with satisfaction that the process was complete. He examined his newly purified club with approval, noting that it was not bad at all. Bear 2 then demonstrated the club's capabilities by commanding it to get bigger, and the weapon expanded in size. Yi Chen observed Bear 2 holding the giant club, remarking that if swung like a bat, few people could withstand its power. In a good mood, Bear 2 offered to buy Yi Chen a drink. Yi Chen gave him a doubtful look, suspecting that Bear 2 intended not to pay. Bear 2 smiled, suggesting that since they got along well, talking about money would hurt their feelings. Bear 2 then hugged Yi Chen with a profiteer's expression, proposing that they make a huge deal together, noting Yi Chen's possession of true fire. However, Yi Chen simply demanded that he pay up. Bear 2 countered by asking if Yi Chen lacked ice jade orchid, then revealed that the elder guarding the spirit grass garden was his uncle, clearly attempting to pique Yi Chen's interest. Moments later, in front of the gate of what appeared to be the Ling Cow Garden, Yi Chen asked Bear 2 if their plan would work. Bear 2 responded with complete confidence that it would definitely succeed. From inside a nearby house, a voice called out with a mixture of complaint and laughter. As Yi Chen and Bear 2 drew closer to the house, the voice continued, telling someone to hold it. Yi Chen remarked that Bear 2's uncle must be very hardworking, but Bear 2 looked confused, noting that the voice didn't sound like his aunt's. Bear 2 called out "Uncle" from outside the house. The voice from inside urgently instructed someone to hurry up and put on their clothes. The door slowly opened, revealing two heads, a girl and a boy, peeking out to see who had arrived. The boy recognized Bear 2, addressing him as Fatty Bear. He then turned to his female companion, telling her to go back first. The girl responded shyly in agreement. As she walked past Bear 2, he confronted the boy, calling him Lee Sanner and questioning his bravery, asking if he wasn't afraid of Bear 2's uncle beating him. Bear 2 added that people who didn't know better might think this was a brothel. Sanner explained that the master had gone roaming around and nobody knew when he would return. He mentioned that he had been lonely, so he had found a companion. As the girl passed by Yi Chen, she gave him a wink and greeted him. Bear 2 asked for confirmation about his uncle's departure, and Sanner verified that it had happened half a month ago. Bear 2 looked at the yawning Sanner and commented that this made things easier. He then took out his club and swung it at Sanner's face, sending one of Sanner's teeth flying. Yi Chen watched in horror, questioning if this violent approach was how Bear 2 planned to obtain the spirit grass. While looking at Sanner's sprawled body on the ground, Yi Chen remarked that this was robbery. Bear 2 dismissed the charge, insisting that whether they stole or robbed, what mattered was securing the spirit grass. If blame was to fall, he declared it would either be on him or on Sanner. He went on to argue that if they did not take too much, with so much spirit grass here, it would go unnoticed. Hearing this, Yi Chen muttered that it felt as though he had boarded a pirate ship, but Bear 2 urged him not to bother with the fallen Sanner and to move on. By the time night settled over the garden, what greeted Yi Chen left him deeply surprised. Spirit grass of this kind was nearly impossible to find even if one searched the entire back mountain, yet here, countless rows of ice jade orchids lay before him, neatly spread and waiting to be harvested. The sight stirred thoughts within him that if all of these orchids were refined into spirit jade liquid, the wealth they could gain would be beyond measure. Standing ahead, Bear 2 shouted for him to stop staring in a daze and start plucking. Yi Chen rushed forward, hurrying to catch up. He plucked the ice jade orchids one by one, placing them into a sack. As the two continued, Bear 2 warned him not to gather only from one area, saying it would be too obvious. Yi Chen replied with confidence that he understood, yet Bear 2 retorted that despite his claim, Yi Chen had already left one section bare from overharvesting. Time passed as they worked, until their sacks were filled with orchids. Bear 2 decided it was enough and called for their withdrawal. Yi Chen placed his hands on his waist and exhaled in agreement. He then enveloped the bulging sack with his chi, shrinking it back to his possession. Suddenly, Bear 2 muttered that his eyes wouldn't stop twitching and urged a quick departure. Yi Chen responded with agreement, and the two prepared to depart. Just then, Yi Chen noticed his true fire suddenly vibrating, which indicated the presence of a treasure nearby. However, Bear 2's urgent insistence prompted him to abandon the investigation, and he quickly acknowledged that he was coming. Almost immediately, Bear 2 noticed a figure flying toward them in the distance and muttered in dismay that his uncle had returned. As his uncle landed directly before them, Bear 2 began to sweat profusely, inwardly lamenting the profoundly unfortunate timing of his uncle's arrival on this of all nights. He then bowed nervously and formally greeted his uncle. His uncle immediately questioned why Bear 2 was wandering the spirit grass garden at such a late hour. Visibly nervous, Bear 2 fabricated an excuse, claiming that his father intended to marry another young woman and that he had come to deliver a wedding invitation. The uncle appeared both angered and shocked by this news. Without another word, he flew away at high speed while shouting that Xingdahai must be tired of living. Bear 2 grew increasingly uncomfortable as he watched him leave. He then turned toward Yi Chen and demanded to know what he was waiting for, instructing him to leave immediately. As they walked away together, Yi Chen asked whether Bear 2 was not concerned about his father seeking retribution for the lie. Bear 2 replied that it was of little consequence since he was beaten up every day anyway. To this, Yi Chen had no response. Returning to Yi Chen's secret cave, Bear 2 observed the pile of spirit jade orchids and remarked that the quantity exceeded 900 plants, indicating they would yield substantial profit. He suggested processing all of them into spirit jade liquid and splitting the proceeds equally, to which Yi Chen agreed. As the bonfire flickered, Yi Chen mentioned requiring additional ingredients besides the orchids. Bear 2 explained that while the other components were easily obtainable, they were located in the back mountain, necessitating an immediate search despite the late hour. Yi Chen affirmed the plan, and they proceeded to scour the mountains through the night. After some time, both collapsed to the ground from exhaustion, with Bear 2 openly expressing his fatigue. However, they soon regained their motivation, mentally preparing themselves with renewed determination. Bear 2 invoked their goal of producing the spirit jade liquid, urging them to continue working, and Yi Chen agreed to proceed. Yi Chen then enveloped the spirit jade orchids within his true fire as Bear 2 observed the process. 9 days later, as morning light illuminated the mountains, one of them exclaimed that the task was finally complete. Yi Chen, surrounded by numerous bottles, announced that the work was done. On the other side, Bear 2 breathed heavily from the exertion. Bear 2 mentioned a question he had long intended to ask. He noted that Yi Chen possessed true fire, a treasure any sect would highly value, and questioned why Yi Chen had only become an intern disciple. Yi Chen responded with an idiom, explaining that while a gentleman is innocent, possessing a precious jade ring becomes a crime. He elaborated that revealing his true fire would inevitably provoke envy and attract unnecessary trouble, hence his decision to conceal it. He further stated that he did not intend to reveal his true fire before strangers until he had grown sufficiently powerful. Bear 2 then informed him that the outer sect competition would occur in 1 month, adding that gaining entry to the inner sect without using his true fire would be challenging. Lost in thought, Yi Chen murmured quietly about the outer sect competition. Bear 2 dusted himself off as he got up and announced his departure, explaining that his father might be looking for him. Yi Chen acknowledged this with a simple affirmation. Watching Bear 2 depart, Yi Chen returned to his thoughts, considering that the Hangua sect should operate similarly to the Xenyan sect, holding an outer sect competition every 3 years where only those who endured until the end could enter the inner sect. He reflected that it had been more than a month since his expulsion from the Xenyan sect, and had he still been there, he would have already entered its inner sect. He then began cultivating, contemplating how circumstances in the world were ever-changing. He continued his reflections, recalling how he had been abandoned by his previous sect and humiliated, but noted that Providence was fair and had given him a second chance to shine within the Hangua sect. As the true fire continued to envelop him, Yi Chen roared in triumph upon reaching the Qi condensation 5th stage. His eyes burned with determination as he opened them, before closing them once more. He noted that for his next breakthrough, he would require at least 100 bottles of spirit jade liquid. It was explained that the Qi condensation 5th stage served as the dividing line within the Qi condensation realm. The first 4 stages were not especially difficult to break through, but starting from the 5th stage, the power gaps grew significantly larger. Progressing to the next realm would be many times harder, as the volume of the divine sea was vastly greater than that of the meridians, making advancement extremely challenging. Yi Chen wiped his forehead and expressed his gratitude for possessing the true fire, which enabled him to produce spirit jade liquid. He reflected that, otherwise, had he been forced to rely solely on absorbing the energy of heaven and earth, it would have been impossible to say when he might have broken through again. Suddenly, Yi Chen noticed a faint glow emanating from within his garment. Reaching inside, he retrieved the gourd he had purchased earlier. As he removed the cork, its mouth began to glow with increasing intensity. Yi Chen stared in astonishment as the gourd began swallowing the surrounding energy, creating a visible vortex at its opening. He realized it possessed the ability to store spirit qi. While observing it continue to absorb more energy, Yi Chen confirmed that the spirit qi outside the cave was indeed overflowing. He peered inside the gourd and saw a glowing energy within, expressing disbelief at its capability. Without hesitation, he drank the contents. Staring at the gourd afterward with amazement, he noted that the liquid was no less effective than spirit jade liquid, concluding that his expenditure of 1,300 spirit stones had not been wasted. He considered that in the future, he could simply place the little purple gold gourd in any location abundant with spirit qi, where it would independently absorb energy and convert it into liquid form. Yi Chen declared it a true treasure, thinking that although the gourd transformed heaven and earth qi slowly, if left undisturbed during absorption, it would accumulate a substantial amount over time. Most importantly, he realized he would no longer need to waste time refining jade liquid. As Yi Chen returned to the spiritual herb garden, he noticed Hua deeply engaged in cultivation, prompting him to remark on what a hard-working young disciple he was. Sensing Yi Chen's presence, Hua opened his eyes and addressed him as Big Brother. Greeting Yi Chen with a smile, Hua expressed genuine happiness at his return. When Yi Chen inquired how he felt, Hua responded enthusiastically that he felt wonderful, noting he was full of energy and that his appetite had grown significantly. Yi Chen stated with confidence that Hua would continue to grow stronger in the future. He then produced 2 bottles of spirit jade liquid and presented them to Hua, instructing him to take 3 drops every hour while emphasizing that 3 drops represented the absolute limit and warning him not to exceed this amount under any circumstances. Hua expressed his gratitude to his big brother. Yi Chen told him to return once he had finished both bottles, which Hua affirmed with great enthusiasm. Hua then asked whether he might be permitted to go to Spirit Mountain to cultivate alongside Yi Chen. Yi Chen paused without immediately responding, causing Hua to look downward while explaining that he merely wished to see the world above. After a moment of contemplation, Yi Chen placed his hand on Hua's shoulder and told him to prepare himself, as he would take him up the mountain the following day. Hua questioned whether this was truly happening, to which Yi Chen urged him to go and get ready. Yi Chen sighed as he watched Hua celebrating while walking away, inwardly wondering whether helping Hua become a cultivator was ultimately the right or wrong decision. In the following morning, a voice instructed Hua to remain well-behaved while practicing on the mountain. Elder Zhang continued, advising him to stay out of trouble and return without delay. When Yi Chen entered the herb garden, he reassured the elder, saying there was no need for concern and promising that he would look after Hua. The scene shifted to the Hangua Sect's Spirit Mountain, where Hua stood before the long staircase, staring at it in open amazement. A sudden voice broke the moment, making him tense. A disciple demanded to know why Yi Chen had brought him up the mountain, accusing them of disregarding the rules. Another disciple immediately countered, calling the first one blind and pointing out that the boy clearly carried true qi fluctuations within his body. Startled, the first disciple admitted his surprise that Hua could now cultivate, calling the development unprecedented. As the exchange went on, Hua grew increasingly uneasy. Noticing this, Yi Chen crouched down beside him to offer comfort, telling him not to be afraid. Hua answered that he was not actually scared. Upon entering the 9 clear pavilions, the elder addressed Yi Chen, admitting that he had previously misjudged him. Yi Chen replied that the elder must be joking. He then introduced Hua to the elder, explaining that the boy was there to obtain an identity card. The elder expressed interest in this request. After checking Hua with his qi, the elder informed him that he could only become an outer disciple at first. The elder asked whether Hua would be willing to accept this arrangement. Hua eagerly agreed, addressing the elder respectfully and stating that as long as he could practice on the mountain, he would accept any conditions. When Hua received his jade tablet and a pouch, he thanked the elder profusely. Yi Chen then bowed to the elder and asked to be excused. Before they could leave, the elder called out to ask whether Yi Chen would be willing to become his disciple after his fieldwork expired. Yi Chen turned back to respond, thanking the elder for his appreciation and stating that he would consider the offer when his fieldwork concluded. The elder replied that he would wait for Yi Chen's answer. Just as they were preparing to leave, a voice called out to remark on what a small world it was. The familiar person continued by expressing that he seemed to encounter trash everywhere. Yi Chen immediately recognized the speaker as Chihao, who then questioned whether the fire whip had ultimately failed to kill him. The young boy standing beside Chihao smiled mockingly while stating how weak Hua appeared to be, causing Hua to begin crying. Yi Chen directly addressed Chihao, declaring that he would be waiting for him the following day at the Fangyun stage. Turning his attention to Hua, Yi Chen suggested they proceed to the Spirit Weapon Pavilion to select a weapon for him. Hua expressed that he had once again embarrassed Yi Chen, adding that the boy named Chi Yun seemed much better than him in every aspect. Yi Chen placed his hand on Hua's head and explained that Chi Yun was obviously a disciple from a wealthy family who had been supplied with various elixirs since birth. He stated that such individuals appeared superior simply because they were better born, while emphasizing that Hua had just become a cultivator and still had considerable progress to make. When Hua questioned whether he truly belonged on the mountain, Yi Chen advised him to take things as they came while they continued walking. He explained that although the world was divided between the strong and the weak, providence remained ultimately fair. He pointed out that being somewhat inferior at present didn't mean Hua would remain so forever, reminding him that Yi Chen himself had been looked down upon when he first arrived. Hua affirmed that he would redouble his efforts and never disgrace his big brother again. The narrative contextualized that there was no shortage of cultivation families in Great Chu, including the Shangyuan family in Dongyu, the Sidu family in Zishu, the Qi family in Nanjiang, and the Wang family in Baikyuan. Both Chihao and the young Qi Yun were scions of the Qi family in Nanjiang. Although cultivation families lacked the deep roots of major sects, they still wielded significant influence. Their disciples had been soaked in elixir baths since youth, and with this substantial advantage alone, most ordinary sect disciples could not hope to compete with them. Upon reaching the spirit weapon pavilion and paying proper respect to the Elder Zhou instructed Hua to proceed inside while explaining he could select only one weapon. Yi Chen encouraged Hua to move forward, suggesting he choose a convenient weapon for the present while promising to find him a superior one in the future. Hua agreed with enthusiasm. Meanwhile, as Elder Zhou was yawning, Yi Chen inquired whether he might have black steel and black iron available. He considered that refining the essence of these materials into the Red Heaven sword would be ideal, since black iron provided hardness while black steel offered flexibility, making them the perfect combination according to weapon refinement art. The narrative noted that black iron and black steel represented valuable refining materials that had always been priceless and could only be discovered through fortunate circumstance. Elder Zhou, wiping his eye, acknowledged that while these materials were indeed precious, he did possess some, though he expressed concern that Yi Chen might not be able to afford them. When Yi Chen inquired about the price, the elder raised a single finger. Yi Chen asked whether this meant 10,000, but Elder Zhou corrected him by stating it was 100,000, which he considered cheap compared to Pang Dahai's Wanbao Pavilion, where it sold at higher prices. He further explained that 100,000 spirit stones would only suffice for a piece of black iron or black steel, approximately the size of an egg. Upon hearing this, Yi Chen could only smile outwardly, while inwardly reflecting that 100,000 spirit stones represented an enormous sum. He noted that for outer sect disciples, even working for the sect their entire lives might only allow them to save such an amount. And even with his ability to refine spirit jade liquid, it would require considerable time to accumulate 100,000 spirit stones. However, the elder then continued by mentioning there was a place that sold these materials very cheaply. When Yi Chen asked where, Elder Zhou revealed it was the Yuming black market. Yi Chen smiled as he privately realized he had forgotten about that particular place. The Yuming black market, located at the junction where the Hangyu sect, Xenyan sect, and Qingyun sect territories converged, functioned both as a trading hub and a notorious outlet for stolen goods. Its reputation fostered constant unrest, drawing in villains and predators who had been infamous since ancient times. Yet, despite its chaos, the market remained attractive for cultivators, offering foreign treasures at prices far lower than those of official markets. Yi Chen asked Elder Zhou how much cheaper black iron and black steel would be at the Yuming black market compared to the pavilion's prices. Elder Zhou explained that goods sold there often came from questionable origins, with sellers eager to dispose of stolen materials quickly. Factoring in the price difference, he estimated the savings could reach 40 to 50,000 spirit stones. Yi Chen repeated the figure to himself, recognizing that such an amount was no small sum. He concluded that if he truly intended to buy black iron and black steel, he would likely need to venture into the Yuming black market. Elder Zhou, however, cautioned that the place was far from safe and that one could lose their life at any moment, urging Yi Chen to think carefully before making the trip. Yi Chen replied that he had no other choice, though he also questioned why the elder sold the materials at such steep prices in his pavilion. Elder Zhou coughed lightly before answering that 40 to 50,000 spirit stones could always be earned back over time. He stressed that acquiring the black iron and steel had not come easily, since he had invested significant effort to obtain them and therefore deserved to profit from their sale. Outwardly, Yi Chen smiled and conceded that the elder was right, though inwardly he considered the man to embody the craftiness typical of shopkeepers. Just then, Hua returned from the pavilion and called out to Yi Chen. Elder Zhou observed the weapon Hua had selected and identified it as a black iron staff. Yi Chen questioned Hua about his choice, noting the variety of available spirit weapons and asking why he had chosen that particular one. Of all weapons, the spear was the most difficult to master, yet the black iron staff, with no spearhead to aid its thrust, was even harder to practice. Elder Zhou suggested that the young boy exchange it for another weapon. Hua declined, saying he truly liked the black iron staff and would not change it. Yi Chen accepted his decision and asked the elder whether he possessed any profound arts for staff techniques. Elder Zhou explained that staff skills were not popular in their sect, so he had none to offer, and suggested they try the Wanbao Pavilion where Pang Dahai might possess such techniques. Later on, Hua reported that the Wanbao Pavilion also lacked staff techniques. Yi Chen reassured him not to worry and promised to find a way to obtain one for him. Around this time, nearby disciples were speaking among themselves, wondering if the rumors were true that Yi Chen intended to challenge Chihao of Renyang Peak. One disciple asked if this could be serious, while another confirmed it and added that Chihao had already reached the second stage of foundation establishment. Word of their discussion soon reached King Yang, who declared that someone was looking down on his Renyang Peak and ordered Chihao to discipline him. Standing below, Chihao accepted with confidence and promised to obey his master. As he walked away, Su Xin and 3 other disciples announced they would accompany him. At the Fengyun stage, a voice remarked that while Yi Chen had previously defeated 2 peak disciples in succession, it was uncertain whether he could overcome Chihao this time. As Yi Chen approached the stage, other disciples continued discussing that Wei Yang and Xiao Long together could not compare to Chihao, pointing out that the Qi condensation stage and the foundation establishment stage were fundamentally different levels. Before Yi Chen could step onto the platform, Bear 2 suddenly stumbled into his path, looking battered. Yi Chen was surprised and inwardly guessed that Bear 2 must have been beaten by his father after returning home. Urgently, Bear 2 asked Yi Chen to tell him honestly how confident he was in defeating Chihao. Yi Chen replied that he was 100% confident. The moment he heard this, Bear 2 vanished in a flash after voicing his approval, leaving Yi Chen momentarily puzzled. Almost at once, Bear 2 reappeared at his betting table, loudly announcing odds of 10 to 1 for Chihao and 1 to 10 for Yi Chen. Waving his hands energetically, he called for wagers, encouraging disciples to stake big for bigger returns. As the crowd gathered, Bear 2 repeated the odds, stressing that those who bet on Chihao stood to win the most, while backing Yi Chen yielded only meager gains. Many disciples, certain of Chihao's victory, crowded the table and placed their stakes. Bear 2's expression brightened as the betting pool on Chihao filled with spirit coins, while he reminded everyone that once placed, all bets were final. Watching from a distance, Yi Chen felt irritated, wondering if everyone truly saw him as that weak. Yet a thought struck him. His annoyance gave way to a calculating smile, for he suddenly realized this might be the perfect chance for easy money, arriving just when he needed funds to purchase black iron and black steel. Just then, a shout announced Chihao's arrival, accompanied by the admiring reactions of girls as he and his group proceeded forward. Upon entering the stage, Chihao immediately questioned the origin of Yi Chen's courage to issue such a challenge. Yi Chen responded by advising against excessive arrogance. Su Xin voiced her characteristic criticism, condemning Yi Chen's perceived excessive killing intent and predicting his failure. Meanwhile, Bear 2 called out from his betting table, offering Chihao a final chance to place a wager before closing the bets. Chihao confirmed his participation by throwing a pouch of 10,000 spirit stones on his own victory. Observers expressed admiration for Chihao, marveling at his wealth, appearance, and courage, with one individual referring to him as Prince Charming. In contrast, Yi Chen spun a pouch on his finger while chuckling and acknowledging his comparative lack of wealth, stating he would wager only 100 spirit stones. A nearby voice dismissed him as a bumpkin, prompting Bear 2 to formally close the betting. As Yi Chen stretched, Chihao proposed a personal wager between them. Yi Chen declined, maintaining that he had no money to bet. Chihao responded by questioning whether Yi Chen was afraid and suggesting that begging might earn him mercy. Yi Chen calmly asserted his lack of fear, adding that defeating Chihao would naturally transfer all valuable possessions to him. Chihao dismissed this as boastful before launching an immediate attack. Yi Chen noted his opponent's exceptional speed and unfamiliar body technique. Yi Chen raised his sword to block Chihao's incoming palm strike, the impact driving him backward across the stage. Chihao snorted dismissively, declaring that Yi Chen could not withstand even a single blow. Without hesitation, he sprang forward with a palm strike, and Yi Chen lifted his sword to meet it. Chihao smiled to himself, thinking that Yi Chen was still alive, while Yi Chen, smiling in return with his sword raised, seemed to challenge whether Chihao was looking down on his true combat ability. Chihao's palm smashed into the floor where Yi Chen had just stood, but Yi Chen had already slipped aside. Still crouched from the landing, Chihao began to speak, only for his words to cut short as his figure suddenly blurred. In an instant, he lunged forward, completing his remark by declaring Yi Chen far too slow. Yi Chen's smile did not falter. If he was too slow, then he would simply move faster. With a sudden burst of speed, Yi Chen sidestepped sharply, slipping past Chihao's line of attack and catching him off guard. Without giving Chihao a chance to recover, he charged in with his sword, shouting fiercely. Chihao narrowly evaded the blade, channeling chi into his palm as he dodged. Planting his foot with force, Yi Chen lifted his hand and unleashed the rushing thunder palm. Their palms collided, chi rippling outward as Chihao gritted his teeth against the force while Yi Chen held his smile. The clash drove Chihao back several steps, and the watching disciples erupted in murmurs. They remarked that Chihao had been defeated head-on, reasoning that his earlier battle with Fei Juke had drained his chi, leaving no chance to recover, though they admitted that Yi Chen himself was far from ordinary. Chihao steadied himself, still smiling, though a trace of smugness lingered as he admitted to underestimating Yi Chen. Yi Chen's confident smile deepened as he warned that underestimation would only bring a miserable defeat. Chihao's expression darkened, and with deliberate precision he formed a hand seal, challenging Yi Chen to withstand the technique he was about to unleash. A beam of light shot out from above Chihao, accompanied by multiple streaks that formed concentric circles as he executed his sword monsoon technique, creating swords of light that obeyed his command. Gripping his own sword with a confident smile, Yi Chen raised his blade and shouted his intent to break the technique, intensifying his force to meet the whirling lights. Chihao responded with a dismissive sound. While still engaged with the light swords, Yi Chen observed Chihao forming another hand gesture. Chihao then unleashed his Earth Dragon technique, causing the floor to shift and rise vertically. A rock monster resembling an onyx emerged from the ground, prompting the watching disciples to remark on the mysterious secret technique and note that Yi Chen was now trapped between the sword monsoon ahead and the Earth Dragon behind. Infusing his hand with chi, Yi Chen glanced at the towering rock monster and declared that he did not care whether it was a dragon or a worm. He punched it while shouting for it to stay down, instantly crushing the creature. Gasps rippled through the disciples, who admitted they had underestimated his strength. Bear 2, in particular, exclaimed that he had never imagined Yi Chen possessed such domineering power. Chihao faltered for a moment, caught off guard, before forcing another hand gesture and declaring that Yi Chen should withstand yet another attack. Yi Chen charged forward, questioning whether Chihao really believed he would be given another chance. In an instant, Yi Chen appeared before Chihao with his sword drawn, causing Chihao to acknowledge Yi Chen's terrifying speed. As Yi Chen's foot struck the ground, the floor beneath them crushed under the impact. Mid-charge, Yi Chen shifted his stance and executed the rushing thunder palm technique. Chihao realized Yi Chen had been concealing his true strength, his expression shifting to fear as he extended his palm to meet the attack. The impact sent Chihao backward with a grunt of pain, his face reflecting disbelief at Yi Chen's power. Without pause, Yi Chen rushed toward him again, unleashing another rushing thunder palm. Chihao coughed blood while blocking the strike with a chi barrier, having activated his profound light shield armor. Yi Chen maintained his palm technique, commanding the shield to break before him, and successfully shattered Chihao's defense. As Chihao grew increasingly nervous, questioning what kind of opponent Yi Chen truly was, Yi Chen advanced with a chi-infused palm toward Chihao's attempt to create another barrier, declaring his intent to break through once more. The lightning palm sent Chihao reeling backward as Yi Chen vowed to shatter the shield completely. Yi Chen lunged again, warning Chihao to pray extensively should they meet again. His attack grazed Chihao before Yi Chen delivered a sharp slap, questioning Chihao's preference for sneak attacks. With his expression radiating fury, Yi Chen punched Chihao while demanding to see his final struggles again, mocking his previous speed. The watching disciples exchanged startled remarks, noting how the basic fighting techniques transformed into something extraordinary in Yi Chen's hands. One observed that Yi Chen appeared less human and more like a fierce beast, while Beartooth clicked his tongue repeatedly in admiration of Yi Chen's ferocity. Meanwhile, Chihao stood battered, his breathing ragged. Su Xin and the other Renyang disciples were flabbergasted, remarking that he had been thoroughly beaten by someone still in the chi condensation stage. They emphasized his disheveled state, insisting that as a foundation establishment cultivator, his strength should have far surpassed Yi Chen's. Unable to accept it, Su Xin accused Yi Chen of resorting to demon arts. His companions quickly echoed the charge, denouncing Yi Chen as a disgrace for employing such forbidden techniques. Their cries spread, and soon the other disciples joined in, shouting that Yi Chen was unworthy to face Chihao and proclaiming that their Hangua sect would never tolerate demon arts. The uproar escalated as they began hurling objects at him, all the while cursing him as a villain and demanding his removal. Voices rose in unison, calling for him to be dragged to the disciplinary hall for harsh punishment, condemning him as evil, despicable, and shameless. Through it all, Yi Chen watched in silence while their accusations grew louder. They jeered at him to curse again, claiming that though he might silence them for a moment, he could not silence everyone present. Their shouts continued relentlessly, declaring that he had forsaken the righteous path for evil ways and insisting he should be ashamed. Without warning, a surge of chi struck Yi Chen in the chest as Chihao shouted for his death. Yi Chen recognized it as yet another despicable sneak attack, recalling how Chihao had ambushed him before in the back mountain while he was gathering spirit grass. This time, Chihao's desperation was plain. Enraged, he hurled a barrage of chi strikes while laughing maniacally. Watching from below, Beartooth slammed the stage in frustration, denouncing the act as shameless. Blow after blow landed on Yi Chen as the Renyang disciples cheered for Chihao to finish him. Su Xin let out a long breath, her face alight with arrogant glee as she assured herself that Chihao could not possibly lose. Beartooth pointed at Chihao in fury, condemning him for taking advantage through vile sneak attacks and questioning whether any righteousness remained in his actions. Driven back step by step, Yi Chen found himself forced to the very edge of the stage. Chihao gathered chi into the form of a sword and again shouted for Yi Chen to go to hell, driving the blade into his shoulder. Yet Yi Chen seized the glowing weapon with his bare hand, anchoring himself to the stage while chi surged into his free palm. He then smashed his fist into Chihao's face, declaring that the old grudge would end that day. With the strike delivered, he tore the blade from his shoulder as his own chi flared, rising in the form of a lion behind him. His challenge resounded as he dared Chihao to fight. Yi Chen followed with a furious barrage of punches, each strike hammered home with a shout. The disciples erupted in protest, condemning Yi Chen as a user of demon arts and demanding his removal, though their outcry was driven less by loyalty to Chihao than by fear of losing the spirit stones they had all wagered on him. Yi Chen unleashed a flurry of punches against Chihao's face, each blow landing with relentless force. From the sidelines, Bear 2 waved a flag with fervor, shouting encouragement. Nearby, one of Su Xin's fellow disciples whispered anxiously about what they should do next, and Su Xin, who had once worn a look of arrogant glee, now stood silent, weighed down by the same worry. The barrage ended as Yi Chen drove a final punch into Chihao that sent him crashing hard to the ground. Chihao lay sprawled, battered and gasping, Yi Chen's name slipping from his lips. Forcing himself upright, he declared that Yi Chen could not defeat him after all. Yi Chen frowned in confusion, only then noticing the talisman affixed to his arm. A startled voice rang out in recognition of a heavenly spirit talisman, and others quickly echoed it, marveling that Chihao possessed such a treasure. They proclaimed Yi Chen's doom, certain that with his true chi sealed, their wagers would be safe. The Renyang disciples took heart, declaring that their senior had planned everything and that there was no longer any need to fear the remaining matches. Su Xin let out a long breath of relief, while Bear 2 roared in outrage, condemning Chihao for resorting to a heavenly spirit talisman against a mere chi condensation opponent. Chihao only answered with mocking laughter. Yi Chen stood tense, realizing the gravity of the situation. With his divine sea bound, his true chi and even the true fire were sealed away. Though his body remained strong and his combat ability sharp, without chi there was no path to victory. Chihao gripped his chi sword, vowing to make Yi Chen suffer a fate worse than death. Yi Chen retorted that the outcome of life and death had yet to be decided. The watching disciples mocked his defiance, pointing out that with his true chi sealed, his defeat was certain. They dismissed his efforts as nothing more than a futile struggle. Chihao swung his sword, demanding to see how long Yi Chen could endure, but Yi Chen dodged the strike. Blow after blow followed, yet each slash was narrowly evaded until Yi Chen reached his Heaven's Breaker sword. Seizing it, he raised the weapon to block Chihao's next attack. Blood trickled from his mouth as he gritted his teeth, forcing himself to hold against the crushing force. Chihao delivered a heavier strike and roared for Yi Chen to die, yet the block held firm. Suddenly, the blade pierced into Yi Chen's chest, but before it could drive deeper, he clutched the edge with his bare hand and shouted as he prepared to punch. Chihao slashed again while catching the punch with his palm, sneering that the attack was too weak. The force of his chi sent Yi Chen staggering backward. Charging forward with a sadistic smile, Chihao taunted that Yi Chen still had not died. His expression then froze in shock as chi chains erupted from his hand, leaving him bewildered at how such a thing was possible. The disciples stared in astonishment, realizing Yi Chen also possessed a heavenly spirit talisman. They marveled at the rarity of such treasures and wondered how he had obtained one, declaring Chihao's defeat inevitable now that he too was bound by its power. Bear 2 grinned broadly, cheering Yi Chen's actions, while Su Xin stood stunned, unable to fathom where Yi Chen had acquired the talisman. Chihao stared at his hand, screaming in disbelief. Yi Chen reminded him of his earlier words, insisting that the outcome of their confrontation was far from decided. Chihao demanded to know how he could possess a heavenly spirit talisman, but Yi Chen dismissed its importance, stating that with both of their true chi sealed, the fight was now even and the real battle was about to begin. Chihao unconsciously stepped back as Yi Chen charged forward. Raising his arms to block, he heard Yi Chen question whether he truly believed such a defense could succeed. A heavy blow struck his face with a cry of pain, and Chihao, long reliant on true chi while neglecting his basic skills, now found himself powerless against Yi Chen's sheer strength and technique. At that moment, a reckless disciple rushed onto the stage and lunged from behind. Yi Chen reacted swiftly, driving a kick into the intruder's abdomen before he could land a strike. He questioned whether someone at the fourth stage of chi condensation was even worthy to stand against him. The surrounding disciples murmured in awe, acknowledging that even without true chi, his strength remained formidable. Not stopping there, Yi Chen gripped the foot of the foolish disciple, whose ugly face twisted in shock as Yi Chen slammed him to the floor with a resounding crash, his body embedding into the ground as smoke slowly cleared from the impact. More disciples stormed onto the Feng Yun stage, declaring that since Yi Chen's true chi was sealed, they would fight him together. Beartooth angrily drew his club, intending to assist Yi Chen, but halted as he watched the scene unfold. Yi Chen struck one disciple with a crushing punch, seized another by the hand, and swung him forcefully into the others, sending bodies tumbling. Beartooth exclaimed in admiration at Yi Chen's strength, while the watching crowd stared in disbelief, murmuring about his ferocity. Another imprudent disciple lunged at Yi Chen from behind, but having endured enough, Yi Chen shouted a warning about courting death before driving a powerful kick into the man's abdomen. The disciple's eyes bulged in horror as he realized his meridian had been crippled by the blow. The sight stirred Su Xin, who immediately confronted Yi Chen, demanding whether he didn't fear punishment from the disciplinary hall for injuring fellow disciples. Yi Chen answered coolly, reminding her of the sect's rules. In Feng Yun stage duels, no third person was permitted to intervene except the combatants themselves. He declared that even if he destroyed such interlopers on the spot, the disciplinary hall would have no authority to punish him, and he turned the blame back on the Renyang disciples for being the first to break the rules. At that moment, Chihao forced himself to his feet, vowing death upon Yi Chen, only to be struck down again by a ringing slap that sent him flying across the stage. Su Xin, watching the clash unfold, drew her sword and prepared to confront Yi Chen. Yet before she could act, Beartooth stepped in behind her, bow already drawn, an arrow aimed at her back. He called her by name, Su Xin Yu, and warned her to remain obedient, declaring that his wind-chasing arrow would not discriminate if she dared resist. The threat made her turn nervously, glancing behind at the danger locked on her. Beartooth held his stance, remarking that he preferred not to aim at anyone, yet if forced to act, she should not blame him for cruelty. At the same time, Yi Chen lifted a pouch in his hand and declared that he would show no further restraint. As he plundered Chihao's belongings, he announced that what once belonged to others was now his, and what was already his remained his own. News of the battle on the Feng Yun stage spread swiftly through the outer sect. A chi condensation disciple who had defeated challengers from all three main peaks in a single month, including one at the Foundation establishment stage, was destined to be remembered as a legend for years to come. At Tianyang Peak, Zhang Lao could only lament, regretting how blind he had been to Yi Chen's potential as a genius disciple. Over at Dayang Peak, Jehang scoffed that Qingyang's Renyang Peak had fared worse than their own. Meanwhile, Renyang Peak was filled with furious shouts of "Kill! Kill!" Chihao lay on a stretcher, swathed head to toe in bandages, vowing through clenched teeth that he would kill Yi Chen, only to be silenced by an unseen voice. Qingyang's disappointment weighed heavily as he berated his disciples, declaring they could not even overcome someone at the chi condensation stage, and that his years of teaching them had been wasted. Su Xin attempted to defend them, insisting Yi Chen was simply too sinister, but Qingyang cut her off, ordering silence. He commanded his disciples to remain at the peak for the next month, warning them not to bring further disgrace with the outer sect tournament fast approaching. Meanwhile, inside the spiritual herb garden, Beartooth exclaimed at Yi Chen, calling him a monster and demanding to know how his injuries could heal so quickly. Yi Chen immediately silenced him, telling him not to make a fuss and ordering him to hand it over. Beartooth quickly passed him a pouch, assuring him that everything inside was given because of him. He reminded Yi Chen of their usual arrangement, dividing evenly so that each of them received 40,000. But as soon as he finished speaking, Beartooth's expression darkened and he grew serious. He asked Yi Chen if he had ever been to the Yuming black market. When Yi Chen admitted he had not, Beartooth eagerly invited him to the 3-year auction that would soon begin there, speaking of the countless treasures that would be available. To prove its worth, he raised his wolf teeth club, boasting that it had been bought at the previous auction. Beartooth stressed that such a chance would not come again for another 3 years. Yi Chen voiced concern about the lack of peace in such a place, but Bertu reassured him that only the wealthy and noble faced danger there, and that during the auction itself, fighting was strictly forbidden. He added that they could always leave after watching if Yi Chen preferred. After some thought, Yi Chen agreed to accompany him. Satisfied, Bertu confirmed their arrangement and spoke of gathering more ice jade orchid at the back mountain the next day, instructing Yi Chen to meet him at their usual spot. As they spoke, Yi Chen's purple gold gourd quietly continued its absorption of energy. His gaze then shifted to the spread of treasures looted from Chihao, marveling at how richly a cultivation family had invested in him and how he had been nurtured under Qingyang's care. The collection was proof of that promise, spiritual fluid capable of nourishing the meridians, prolonging life, and strengthening the body, alongside weapons so finely made they could rival even his own red heaven sword. As he held a turtle shell in his hand, Yi Chen was struck with surprise. He studied it more carefully, noting its unusual nature. At that very moment, his purple gold gourd suddenly activated on its own, pulling the turtle shell inside. The sudden movement caught him off guard, and he immediately peered into the gourd to see what had happened. Inside, he found the turtle shell resting within. Without warning, a burst of light erupted from the gourd, so intense that it stung his eyes. Startled, Yi Chen fixed his attention on the gourd, which had begun to glow with a strange brilliance. Letters emerged, casting themselves clearly before him as he recognized the words, "Thousand Rapid Shadow Mirage." Later that night, beneath the flickering glow of candlelight, Yi Chen invoked the newly revealed technique. As he shouted its name, his body shone with radiance and he closed his eyes to focus. When he took a step forward, afterimages of himself remained behind, stretching with every movement. Inwardly, he reflected on the sensation, realizing that the speed was without limit, elusive and fleeting like a shadow. With each step, the technique unfolded further, multiplying until it became countless, endless, like a mirage. Yi Chen's heart surged with joy as he declared the value of the 1,000 shadow rapid mirage, recognizing that it was worth far more than 1,000 spirit stones. In Yi Chen's secret cave, a voice laughed heartily, announcing that the spirit jade liquid refined this time was 3 times the amount of the last batch. Bertu appeared extremely pleased with himself, declaring that secretly stealing ice jade orchids again had not been in vain. His expression then shifted to that of a cunning villain as he instructed Yi Chen to go to Wanbao Pavilion the next day to obtain something useful. Yi Chen looked confused in the background, questioning what this, something useful, might be. Bertu clarified that he needed 3 specific items: the Heavenly Spirit Talisman, Heavenly Walk Talisman, and Heavenly Thunder Talisman. Yi Chen's expression changed to delight upon learning that Wanbao Pavilion sold these 3 talismans. It was then explained that the Heavenly Spirit Talisman's main function could confine a cultivator's true qi for a short time. The Heavenly Walk Talisman's primary purpose was escape, and could instantly increase the user's speed. And the Heavenly Thunder Talisman served as a powerful attack with the capability to explode mountains. Bertu balanced bottles on his head while confirming that Wanbao Pavilion indeed sold these items, listing their prices. The Heavenly Spirit Talisman cost 10,000 spirit stones, the Heavenly Walk Talisman 30,000 spirit stones, and the Heavenly Thunder Talisman 90,000 spirit stones. He further explained that because the Heavenly Thunder Talisman was too powerful, it was forbidden within Hangua Sect, though it could be used outside the sect's boundaries. Yi Chen expressed his poverty, questioning who could possibly afford such expensive items. Bertu responded that among Hangua Sect's outer disciples, there were vast numbers of talented individuals, many from cultivation families who were therefore very wealthy. Reflecting on this, Yi Chen recalled that just the day before, he had found 30,000 spirit stones in Chihao's storage bag, and he reasoned that the other disciples from hidden cultivation families must also possess considerable wealth. Bertu juggled the bottles as he explained that although talismans were expensive, they were essential for anyone venturing outside, able to save a life at critical moments. He stressed that to him, life mattered far more than spirit stones. Yi Chen gave him a thumbs up, agreeing that no matter how many spirit stones one possessed, they meant nothing after death. Outwardly, he showed agreement, but inwardly he resolved that before heading to the Yaoming Black Market, he needed to visit Wanbao Pavilion again. Though unable to afford a Heavenly Thunder talisman, he decided that 2 Heavenly Spirit talismans and 1 Heavenly Walk talisman would suffice. At Wanbao Pavilion, a voice announced the handover of 3 Heavenly Spirit talismans and 1 Heavenly Walk talisman. Yi Chen bolted from the elder with a mischievous smile, shouting that he had been cheated again and warning him to watch out for holes when walking at night. The elder roared after the brat in outrage, vowing to cut him, while Yi Chen continued to tease, daring him to give chase. Later that night, on his way back to the spiritual herb garden, Yi Chen reflected that the older one was, the wiser one became. Despite all his bargaining, he still could not gain the upper hand against Pang Dahai, who clearly held his position at Wanbao Pavilion for good reason. Reaching the hut, the sound of Hua practicing with his new weapon reached his ears. Watching him train, Yi Chen thought that perhaps Hua was destined to wield a staff and resolved to find a staff martial technique for him. On the following day, Yi Chen noticed 3 disciples flying overhead and suggested renting a spirit bird to travel by air. Beartu rejected the idea, explaining that the strong occupied the skies and it was far safer to remain on the ground. Taking out 2 talismans, he drew Yi Chen's attention. Yi Chen's eyes glittered in recognition as he recognized them as 1,000 travel talismans, which, once activated, allowed the user to cover thousands of miles in a day. Beartu seemed impressed by Yi Chen's knowledge, then handed him one with instructions to stick it to his leg, pour true qi into it, and keep control of his direction, warning him not to crash into a mountain. Yi Chen accused him of exaggerating as he prepared to run. Pouring true qi into the talisman, Yi Chen flashed forward with great speed. Beartu activated his own talisman and quickly caught up, while Yi Chen acknowledged how fast they were. As they raced across the mountains, Yi Chen reflected that although the 1,000 travel talismans were not as fast as his 1,000 shadow rapid mirage technique, they consumed far less true qi. Maintaining their pace, Beartu announced they would arrive in about an hour. At that moment, Yi Chen's expression grew serious as he remarked that he could smell blood. Beartu waved it off, telling him to relax and reminding him that he still had his homie's protection. Yet unease stirred in Yi Chen, and a sudden thought struck him that something was wrong. He shouted a warning and yanked Beartu backward, leaping away just as an explosion erupted beneath them. When the smoke cleared, a crater marked the spot where they had stood. Yi Chen cursed at the wickedness of the trap, while Beartu exclaimed in disbelief, questioning who would place 1,000 knives trap in that location. Suddenly, a tall figure appeared behind Yi Chen and Beartu as they continued observing the crater. He carried a huge sword and let out a menacing laugh, acknowledging that they had managed to escape his trap array. Ominous G radiated from him as he admitted that he had truly underestimated them. Yi Chen immediately recognized the figure as being at the core formation stage. The figure demanded their storage bags, promising to grant them an easier death in return. Yi Chen and Beartu hesitated for a moment, each weighing whether they should engage in combat. Yi Chen quickly analyzed that although the figure's true qi was strong, it seemed unstable, indicating that he had only recently broken through to the core formation stage. With his mind made up, Yi Chen resolved to fight. Beside him, Beartu began chanting "fight" over and over, working himself into courage. Then, in unison, they both suddenly charged forward, shouting their intent to defeat the figure. As Beartu swung his club at the opponent, the man raised his palm to block, scoffing that they were courting death. Yet the moment the club suddenly grew larger mid-swing, his expression faltered into panic, just before the weapon came crashing down and struck him with tremendous force. The figure examined his bleeding hand, breathing heavily as he cursed in frustration before charging forward with a furious snort, vowing that they would die for daring to injure him. Yi Chen lunged to meet him, answering with a snort of his own as he manifested his true fire in his hand and hurled it toward the enemy. The figure barely managed to dodge, his sword slipping from his grasp and driving into the ground as he staggered back and fell onto his buttocks, exclaiming in disbelief at the sight of true fire. Before he could recover, Yi Chen charged again, executing his beast heart fury tiger pounce technique and grazing the man's shoulder. Without pause, Yi Chen struck the figure in the face with a palm, then drove his knee into the man's chin before pulling his leg back and delivering a kick that sent him flying with bulging eyes. Bertu rushed in with his massive club, shouting a battle cry as he brought it crashing down. The figure struggled under the weight of the blow, finally managing to repel it. Growing more enraged, he gathered chi into his palm and roared for them to go to hell. Yi Chen and Bertu charged together with their techniques just as the attack erupted, the blast's force flinging them both backward. As they landed hard on their buttocks, Bertu exclaimed that he had been scared to death, while Yi Chen remarked that the gap between them wasn't so great after all. The figure glared down at them, declaring they were all going to die. Yi Chen answered with a smile, remarking that it was still uncertain who would die first. Bertu slapped his palm against Yi Chen's in a high five, praising him for a good job, and Yi Chen replied that Bertu wasn't bad either. Infuriated, the figure cursed them as little brats and charged once more, chi surging into his palm as he shouted for them to die. Yet instead of unleashing devastation, his strike produced only a weak puff, almost like a fart. Stunned, he exclaimed in confusion, until he noticed the two heavenly spirit talismans affixed to his shoulder. Bertu stood with Yi Chen as both smiled ominously, their fists ready. He noted that their enemy was at core formation stage, and that the two heavenly spirit talismans could only confine his true chi for about a minute, leading Yi Chen to suggest that they should take advantage of the sealed chi and quickly kill him. The figure's snot dripped as both charged forward, shouting their respective fist and palm techniques. Mid-charge, Yi Chen shifted suddenly and delivered a slash, forcing the figure to cough up blood. At the same time, Bertu raised his gigantic club, his grin widening as he announced his approach. The figure's nostrils flared in anxious desperation, and he pleaded frantically. A massive impact followed, the shock reverberating through the mountain, and the figure was left sprawled across the ground. Yi Chen remarked that they should not linger, and Bertu urged him to hurry and strip the figure's belongings. Moments later, the man's clothes flew off, leaving him nearly naked as Yi Chen and Bertu departed with casual ease. As they moved away, they remained unaware of a purple-robed figure watching from afar. The person's face came into view, observing with interest and noting the presence of true fire. Not long after, Yi Chen and Bertu cried out in astonishment as they uncovered more than 100,000 spirit stones, remarking that the man's wealth was indeed fitting for someone at core formation stage. Their gazes lingered over the trove, and Yi Chen speculated that he had been on his way to the Yuyuming black market for the auction, never expecting trash to capsize his boat. Bertu's eyes gleamed as he stared at the haul, declaring that the two heavenly spirit talismans had not been wasted, and suggesting their usual 50-50 split. Among the scattered items, a pot drew Yi Chen's attention as his true fire stirred, sensing it as a treasure. At that same moment, he and Bertu lunged forward, their cheeks knocking together in their haste to seize what they wanted, only to realize their hands had landed on different objects. The discovery set them both laughing, and with a ringing high five they affirmed each other as good brothers. Yi Chen then examined one of the two books they had seized, recognizing the title as Shaking Mountain Fist and questioning what sort of technique it might be. At the same time, Bertu flipped open the other book, his expression twisted into a lewd grin, and with a sudden nosebleed, he declared it was not bad and insisted on keeping it. Yi Chen regarded him with an unimpressed glance and remarked that it was wonderful. A short while later, they arrived at their destination. Bertu lifted his gaze to the enormous floating stone before them and explained that once they passed this boundary stele, they would reach the Yuming black market. Yi Chen looked at the inscription upon the stone, noting the words Heaven Profound Sect, and questioned where they had come from, for he had never heard of such a force existing within the great Chu dynasty. Bertu answered, recalling what he had learned from his uncle. Before the founding of the Hangua sect, the Heaven Profound sect had already been established, independent of any other sect. Their members were said to be both mysterious and powerful, and it was rumored that their leader had already reached the realm of heavenly immortal. Yi Chen, upon hearing this, was struck with astonishment. To reach the heavenly immortal stage was to ascend through the 6 stages of cultivation: qi condensation, foundation establishment, core formation, void soul, half-step heavenly immortal, and finally heavenly immortal, climbing to the heavens one step at a time. Even among the 3 major sects and the formidable bloodthirsty palace, not a single cultivator had ever attained the heavenly immortal stage. Bertu continued forward toward the steps and urged that they should enter. Just as Yi Chen followed, he suddenly sensed a strange change in his body and questioned what was happening. Bertu dismissed his alarm, explaining that for every auction, the Heaven Profound sect placed a powerful prohibition, one that suppressed everyone who entered to the qi condensation stage. Yi Chen asked if even those at the half-step heavenly immortal stage would be restricted. Bertu confirmed without exception. Yi Chen pressed further, wondering aloud if the Heaven Profound sect truly possessed such strength. Bertu affirmed it with certainty, adding that although the sect resided within the Yuming black market, they never interfered with the conflicts there. However, whenever the triennial auction was held, fighting was strictly forbidden. Bertu recounted a legend that people from the bloodthirsty palace had once come here to cause trouble but were killed, their bodies later sent home as a warning. He described the Heaven Profound sect as a symbol of this land, noting that neither sects nor cultivation families dared to provoke them. Yi Chen remarked that no matter how strong someone might be outside, they would still end up dead in there. As they continued along the bustling street, vendors called out to them, advertising spirit stones, spirit liquid, and spiritual weapons. Yi Chen glanced around at the market, while Bertu warned him not to underestimate the owners of the stalls, explaining that many were not so tolerable, and one of them could very well be the elder of a sect or the strongest of a cultivation family. Yi Chen admitted he could believe that. Bertu then mentioned that the auction would not begin until tomorrow, so they should wander around and enjoy themselves at night. Just then, Bertu's eyes widened. He suddenly dashed toward a crowd, calling back for Yi Chen to look around first while he went to see something. Yi Chen looked mildly annoyed and muttered that the Yuming black market really did sell everything. But his expression shifted as shock struck him. He had spotted his former lover Jai Ningxuang, accompanied by Hua Yun, the foremost of the great 9 direct disciples of Xenyan sect. Hua Yun suggested to his junior sister, Jai, that they go elsewhere, but she gave no reply. Yi Chen stood watching her from a distance, his expression unreadable, realizing that she had come as well. In this scene, I've restored the original Chinese text, which the English version left out and replaced only with images. What follows is my own translation of that text, with a few small nuances added so the emotion and meaning stay true to the story. With a mask in his hand, Yi Chen wondered whether seeing his former lover again would cause his heart to ache. The thought lingered as he walked forward, each step weighted by what lay ahead. He admitted that it would, that the pain could not be avoided. As the distance closed, he steadied himself, ready to pass by her without so much as a glance. He held to the resolve that the pain in his heart would last only for a brief moment, nothing more than a fleeting sting. When he moved past her completely and received not the slightest recognition, the ache rose within him, sharp and sudden, then slipped away just as swiftly. What remained was the certainty that there was no longer love, yet neither was there hate. He continued on alone, the faint glow of hanging lanterns accompanying his steps. The bond they once shared had already dissolved, and everything of yesterday had become no more than passing clouds. Since they no longer shared fate together in this lifetime, he could only wish that in the next, they would not even meet, but remain strangers completely. Noticing Yi Chen with the mask, Bertu called out, saying he had been looking for him for a long time. Yi Chen removed the mask with a smile, explaining that he had just bought it and asked if it looked good. Bertu looked unimpressed, remarking that he spent money too freely. He mentioned finding a good place to stay and ushered Yi Chen toward it to rest. Beartooth instructed him to go to bed early as he was feeling sleepy. Yi Chen teased him, asking if he was that eager to learn the Wuxian's secret method, and warning him to be careful not to die because of it. Beartooth spat dismissively in response. Meanwhile, in his own room, Yi Chen examined the new pot, holding it in one hand while gripping his gourd in the other. He wondered what mystery it might contain. All at once, the gourd pulled the pot inside, and the purple gold vessel shook violently in response. From its erratic movement, Yi Chen judged that the reaction was far too strong for something ordinary, and that the small cauldron must conceal an extraordinary secret. He voiced his question, uncertain of what was hidden within. Inside the purple gold gourd, the pot hovered above the liquefied qi. Then, when a drop of blood fell into the liquid, the pot was suddenly expelled with a sudden puff. Yi Chen held the pot with a judgmental look, remarking that after the little gourd had refined it for so long, there seemed nothing special about it. Taking a drink, he sat at the table and concluded that even the little gourd must sometimes malfunction. But then his eyes grew weary as the gourd began to shake, and he hastily set it down while tugging at his garments, unsettled by what was happening. His breath grew heavy, and an intense thirst welled up inside him. Heat surged through his body as he pulled his clothes open, gulping again from the gourd only to find its contents turned red, which he craved as though it were water. Flames seemed to flicker in his eyes as he cried out in agony, his gaze burning crimson, a red fire rising on his forehead. Yi Chen clutched his head as his eyes glowed with unsteady light. A muffled groan escaped him before the glow dimmed, his eyes returning to normal as he lost consciousness. At dawn the next day, in the same inn, the first light of morning spilled into his room. Yi Chen lay on the floor, stirring as he slowly regained awareness. Startled, he forced himself upright, checking his condition. In that moment, he realized that his cultivation had risen, advancing 3 full stages to the 8th level of qi condensation. Confusion struck him as he questioned what had taken place the night before. Suddenly, the door burst open with a crash as Beartooth kicked it wide. He urged Yi Chen to hurry, declaring the lateness of the hour. Catching sight of him still seated on the floor, Beartooth demanded to know what he was doing there. Yi Chen, scrambling for an excuse, claimed he was practicing abdominal strength. Beartooth faltered at the answer, blurting out in disbelief before scoffing at the notion of practicing hair muscles. Without waiting further, he pressed Yi Chen to set off at once, warning that if they delayed, there would be no room left at the auction. The scene shifted to the hidden dragon pavilion of the yumming black market, where the air buzzed with impatience. Voices rose in complaint about the delay, some questioning why the auction had not yet begun, while others speculated about the treasures the heaven-profound sect might reveal this time. Yi Chen remarked that the auctions held by the heaven-profound sect were indeed extraordinary, and Beartooth readily agreed. Reaching into his crotch area to search for something, Beartooth left Yi Chen staring wide-eyed in disbelief. To Yi Chen's shock, he produced 2 pills, explaining that they were face-transforming and voice-changing pills, urging Yi Chen to take one. He emphasized their ability to alter both voice and appearance, advising extra caution. Yi Chen coughed lightly and declined, insisting he would rather wear a mask. Beartooth popped the pills into his own mouth, dismissing the refusal, and Yi Chen could not help but ask why his storage bag was kept there. Beartooth, whose appearance had already shifted into that of a monk with a shining bald head, explained it was for safety. Just then, the doors of the pavilion creaked open. Before they had even swung fully wide, an elder strode inside, immediately drawing every gaze. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, wondering who this conceited and arrogant figure might be. As the rest of the guests began filing in, someone whispered an explanation that the old man hailed from Black Mountain and held absolute authority over the region. At once, another admitted their eyes had been blind not to recognize him. Inside the establishment, Yi Chen admired his surroundings as someone beckoned them forward. Beartooth crunched loudly on food across the table while Yi Chen glared angrily, demanding he save some for him. Bertu went on chewing, reminding him that with a mask on, he could not eat anyway. Their bickering persisted until Yi Chen noticed an elder approaching their table. As the man sat down, Yi Chen sensed a heavy pressure settle over them. Though the elder's cultivation was suppressed, his presence still loomed like a towering mountain. Not long after, the announcer's voice carried across the hall, first welcoming the Qi family from Nanjiang. Next came the entry of the Sidu family from Zishu. An onlooker then asked whether the Wang family from Baikyuan had come, and immediately answered himself, declaring that they were indeed present. Afterward, the announcer gave word of the Shangyuan family from Dongyu. Yi Chen turned to ask if no one from Bertu's clan would appear. Bertu gestured toward a semi-bald man eating nearby, identifying him as his second uncle. Yi Chen remarked on the uncle's casual demeanor, to which Bertu explained that such behavior was necessary. The announcer then shifted focus to the sects. Representatives of Hangyu sect were introduced, prompting Yi Chen to ask about a man he did not recognize. Bertu identified him as Feng Wuhen, the peak master of Yujian Peak. Moments later, the arrival of Xenyan sect was declared. Yi Chen immediately spotted Wu Changqing, recalling how this elder had expelled him from the sect. The announcer's voice rang out again, this time announcing the Qingyan sect, and Lu Zhai, second among the 9 great direct disciples, strode in with a snort and a smug smile. Yi Chen's fist clenched as he remembered the man who had abolished his meridian, vowing silently that Lu Zhai would one day pay the price. Before the weight of that thought could settle, the announcer called out once more, this time naming the bloodthirsty palace. Murmurs rose at once from those gathered. Many remarked that things would become lively now, and warned that taking home a treasure would not be so simple. Yi Chen's gaze fixed upon the 3 figures from the palace, and he recognized them as the very same who had chased Chu Linger through the demon beast forest that day. Within the Great Chu, there was 1 palace and 3 sects. Of these, the bloodthirsty palace held dominance over northern Chu. They were a true powerhouse, and even the 3 great sects dared not provoke them lightly. The hall gradually settled as an elder stepped forward, raising his voice to call for everyone's attention. Introduced as Elder Yang of the Heaven's Profound Sect, he declared that all present should already be familiar with the rules of the gathering, so there was no need for unnecessary words. With that, he proclaimed the official start of the auction. For the first item, Elder Yang brought out a sword, presenting it as the Ziyang sword. With a surge of qi, he controlled the blade, letting it hover before the audience as he introduced it. The starting price, he declared, was 50,000 spiritual stones, and the one who offered the highest bid would claim it. The bidding began immediately, voices calling out in quick succession. Offers rose, 51,000, 53,000, 60,000. From his seat, Yi Chen clicked his tongue, remarking that the price was far too steep. Beside him, Bertu countered that this was only the first item of the auction, meant to set the stage with excitement, and reminded him that more affordable treasures were usually found later on. The offers continued to climb until the price reached 90,000. At that moment, Elder Wu, seated in the upper section, struck his chair and shouted a bid of 100,000, declaring that the Xenyan sect wanted it. The hall quieted at once. The bidders below each stilled, inwardly deciding against competing further. None dared to provoke the sect's claim, each one thinking it wiser not to challenge their authority. Elder Yang looked over the crowd and announced that if no further bids were made, the Ziyang sword would be sold to the Xenyan sect, leading Elder Wu to give a satisfied chuckle from his seat. Just then, another treasure was brought out, the Ziyang copper furnace. Elder Yang announced the starting price as 30,000 spiritual stones, and the auction began. The hall filled with noise as hands shot up and voices rang out. Bids leapt quickly, 50,000, then 70,000, until another raised the price to 90,000. Yi Chen noted with interest that the small copper furnace was not bad, while Bertu urged him to raise the price if he wanted it. Yi Chen dismissed the thought with the simple fact that he had no money, and Bertu told him to forget it. The bidding climbed higher, reaching 150,000. Then, from behind a curtain, a voice declared 160,000, announcing that the Xenyan sect would take it. The other bidders immediately fell silent, muttering that it was pointless to compete with Xenyan sect. With no one else willing to raise the price, Elder Yang proclaimed that the Ziyang copper furnace would belong to Xenyan sect. Next, a small pagoda was presented, and Elder Yang declared it to be the 7-colored pagoda with a starting price of 80,000. Bidders shouted in quick succession, pushing the price past 100,000, then 150,000, then 200,000. Another voice pressed further to 300,000, but from the second floor, a mocking laugh cut across the hall. A voice from Bloodthirsty Palace threatened destruction, silencing the bidder at once. The man conceded he wanted no part of it, and the representative of Bloodthirsty Palace mocked his choice before falling quiet. Elder Yang announced that the 7-colored pagoda now belonged to Bloodthirsty Palace. With a casual gesture, Elder Yang directed attention to the next item as a plain rod was displayed. He yawned as he announced it simply, an iron rod, starting price 10,000, bidding to begin. At that instant, Yi Chen's eyes lit up in surprise. The true fire within him reacted strongly, and he recognized that this seemingly ordinary rod was a treasure. Yet to the others, its plain appearance provoked only doubt. Murmurs rose as bidders questioned what exactly it was, prompting Elder Yang to reply in his unhurried manner that it was exactly as named, an iron rod, though if they preferred, they could treat it as nothing more than a fire stick. A pair of bidders murmured among themselves, dismissing it outright. To them, it looked too plain to be a treasure, even somewhat unsightly. They agreed that no matter how much money one had, wasting it on such a thing was senseless, and it was better not to buy it at all. Seeing no response from the hall, Elder Yang asked if no one wanted the item. He was ready to proceed to the next treasure when a voice suddenly interrupted, declaring a desire to claim the iron rod. The surrounding bidders reacted in surprise. Yi Chen called out his bid of 10,000 spirit stones, announcing that he would take it. Laughter immediately rippled through the hall as the crowd mocked him, questioning how he could waste so much for what they considered a broken rod. Yi Chen dismissed their ridicule, remarking that it was cheap, while Bear 2 beside him looked utterly dumbfounded. The hall burst into louder laughter, many finding his behavior absurdly amusing. Elder Yang stated that if there were no further bids, the iron rod would go to the young man. But before he could close the sale, another voice interjected, raising the price to 11,000. It was Elder Wu of the Xenyan sect, who declared that the iron rod would be taken by his sect. Yi Chen immediately pushed back, raising the bid to 12,000. The crowd reacted with disbelief. They questioned who this young man was to dare compete with the Xenyan sect over something as trivial as a black iron rod. To them, his decision seemed insane, as if most of his wits had been washed away. From behind the curtains on the second floor, Elder Wu laughed, mocking Yi Chen and demanding if he knew who he was challenging. Yi Chen, unfazed, shot back, questioning whether the elder was trying to threaten him. Amused by his boldness, Elder Wu praised him for having courage. He remarked that it had been a long time since anyone dared compete against the Xenyan sect. Declaring that he would play along, Elder Wu raised the bid to 20,000 spirit stones. Yi Chen countered with 21,000. Elder Wu immediately pushed it to 30,000. Yi Chen raised again to 31,000. Elder Wu's voice rang out once more, stating with satisfaction that he would pay 40,000. Bear 2 comically coughed blood when Yi Chen declared a bid of 100,000, sputtering in disbelief and calling him crazy. Elder Wu countered with 110,000, daring Yi Chen to raise it further. Yi Chen answered with 200,000, smiling as he asked whether Elder Wu was still enjoying their little game. The other bidders turned their attention to him, wondering which family he belonged to. Elder Yang reacted to the bloodlust emanating from Elder Wu, who sneered at Yi Chen's audacity for bidding so high. Yi Chen remained calm, acknowledging that he could not compete with Elder Wu financially, but resolving to make him pay significantly regardless of the outcome. Elder Wu then bid 210,000, daring Yi Chen to raise the stakes again. Beartooth asked if Yi Chen truly desired the iron rod, and Yi Chen confirmed it. To Yi Chen's surprise, Beartooth produced a pouch and offered 300,000, instructing Yi Chen to repay him later. When Yi Chen tried to speak, Beartooth dismissed concerns about the money, saying that a true man should demonstrate strength and that he could just return next time. Touched by this gesture, Yi Chen expressed gratitude before shouting a bid of 300,000. The other bidders gasped at the exorbitant price for an iron rod, calling it ridiculous. Elder Wu glared at Yi Chen with murderous fury, only for Elder Yang to release his own strength, warning that any further killing intent would be met without courtesy. Elder Wu suppressed his annoyance and raised the bid to 310,000. Yi Chen answered with a calm smile, declaring 500,000, prompting the other bidders to exclaim that he had gone mad and that the price was already sky-high. Elder Wu slammed the arm of his chair in fury, his breathing heavy with anger. Elder Yang then announced that since no one had raised the price, the iron rod now belonged to the young friend. Yi Chen and Beartooth exchanged a discreet high five, their satisfaction evident. As the auction assistant carried the iron rod forward, Yi Chen fixed his gaze on it, inwardly hoping it would not disappoint him. Elder Yang declared the auction ended for the day and instructed the winning bidder to bring money to the back hall to collect the item. After receiving his own treasure, Elder Wu brushed past Yi Chen, glaring coldly and warning him of the price for offending Xenyan Sect. Yi Chen replied that fair bidding meant the higher price won, asking how it could be his fault if Elder Wu was unwilling to spend more. Elder Wu retorted that Yi Chen might not keep such a sharp tongue once the auction was over. Yi Chen only smiled, inwardly dismissing him as a fool for thinking he would get the chance. A figure nearby remarked that Yi Chen had shown great nerve today. Yi Chen replied modestly that the elder was joking. Looking toward the smiling Elder Yang while holding his iron rod, Yi Chen expressed his gratitude. Elder Yang answered with a mysterious smile and a hint of interest as he acknowledged his thanks and informed that someone had been waiting for him, inviting Yi Chen inside, which caused him to grow serious. Within the hidden dragon pavilion's back hall, a courtyard featured a gazebo surrounded by a pond. Yi Chen walked toward the elder seated inside it, recognizing him as the same person who had sat at their table earlier and wondering if he belonged to the heaven-profound sect. Upon reaching the table, he asked why the elder had summoned him. The elder requested assistance, specifically asking for the true fire within his body to help him. This revelation left him stunned. To address his shock, the elder clarified that this help would not go unrewarded and offered whatever he desired in return. In response to this offer, he replied that he needed money. The elder asked if that was all, and after his confirmation with a cough, the elder threw a pouch. Consequently, he caught it while expressing gratitude. Pulling up his sleeve, the elder revealed purple marks around his arm and declared they should begin. With his mouth agape, Yi Chen asked what the marks were. The elder, holding his right wrist, explained it was a witch's curse, an extremely vicious curse seal performed exclusively by the legendary witch clan. If not contained or cleared in time, the cursed person would inevitably die. The witch clan was one of the 9 ancient clans, alongside the demon clan, immortal clan, spirit clan, ancient clan, monster clan, god clan, dragon clan, and barbarian clan, each regarded as immensely powerful and true ancient giants. Yi Chen inquired whether his true fire could assist in restraining the witch's curse. The elder responded that ordinary true fire would prove ineffective, but Yi Chen's possessed the potential to succeed. Reacting to this explanation, Yi Chen appeared surprised and questioned whether true fire varied in strength. The elder confirmed this variation, explaining he had encountered numerous true fires but had never witnessed true golden fire like Yi Chen's. Following this statement, Yi Chen expressed doubt about his true fire's power. The elder elaborated that true fire born of heaven and earth possessed innate wisdom and naturally suppressed itself according to the master's cultivation level. He continued that Yi Chen's true fire corresponded to his qi condensation cultivation base, and added that it had not yet awakened. Puzzled by this revelation, Yi Chen sought clarification about what not awakened meant. As Yi Chen produced his true fire, the elder asserted it was not ordinary and surpassed all true fires he had previously encountered. When Yi Chen placed his palm containing the true fire against the elder's palm, the elder instructed him to refine one curse line. The elder explained that the witch's curse intertwined with the curse line, so refining it would enable him to break the witch's curse independently. Yi Chen acknowledged understanding. During the process, the elder suddenly noticed a faint dark qi mixed within Yi Chen's true fire, causing him to inwardly exclaim about demon blood. The elder continued his thoughts, wondering how demon blood could exist in Yi Chen's body, and concluding that this young man remained unaware of the ancient demon clan's blood flowing through his veins. As the process continued, Yi Chen intensified his true fire with a shout, causing the witch's curse to spread outward from the elder's skin. When the dark lines began lifting away, the elder swiftly formed a hand gesture and gave a signal. He traced his finger from shoulder to arm, guiding the flow as the curse rose from the surface of his body. Strain showed across his expression as he forced the corruption outward, releasing a shout just as a shockwave rippled through the pond and dispersed the curse completely. Panting, the elder looked at his cleansed arm and expressed his thanks to Yi Chen for the assistance. Yi Chen responded respectfully. Afterward, back on the streets of the Yuming black market, Yi Chen opened the pouch the elder had given him. Seeing the contents, he counted 500,000 spirit stones and remarked in amazement that the elder must be a man of considerable standing. While checking further, he found a slip of paper inside the pouch, stating that the iron staff was a gift from the heaven's profound sect and that the 500,000 spirit stones were to be returned to him. Realizing the source, Yi Chen laughed at how wealthy the sect truly was. As he continued down the street, his attention caught on a nearby stall displaying black iron and black steel. He called out to the seller but received no reply. Glancing around, he noticed the same elder hurrying past, only to slow when two passing women drew his gaze, his expression turning lecherous. Yi Chen warned him in irritation, saying that if he kept staring, he would take the items away himself. Startled, the elder turned his attention back and, upon hearing Yi Chen's intent to buy, immediately shifted to a more serious demeanor. He praised Yi Chen for recognizing fine materials and claimed that all his goods were treasures waiting for the right buyer. Yi Chen brushed off the words and demanded the price. The elder raised one finger, stating the price as 100,000. Yi Chen countered with 50,000, reasoning that if the price were 100,000, he would have purchased the item at Zhou Dafu's establishment instead of coming to the Yuming black market. Shocked by the drastic reduction, the elder accused Yi Chen of cutting the price too severely. Yi Chen responded innocently, explaining that his master had taught him to always have the initial price when bargaining. The elder then offered 90,000, insisting it could not go lower, to which Yi Chen responded with 60,000. Without hesitation, the elder handed over the products and agreed to the deal, causing Yi Chen to inwardly suspect he had failed to bargain effectively. Suddenly, the elder began glancing nervously back and forth, urging Yi Chen to hurry with the payment. Following the elder's gaze, Yi Chen noticed another figure approaching with an intense aura of hatred. This newcomer shouted at the seller, addressing him as Zhu Ji Yu and calling him an ignorant fool, threatening him with 1,000 cuts and death. Elder Zhu immediately dashed away, pursued by the enraged elder who continued shouting threats and demanding he stop. Yi Chen stood dumbfounded by the sudden chase. Afterward, Yi Chen coughed with a cheeky smile while holding the two items, expressing satisfaction at having acquired them for free. Returning to his room at the inn, Yi Chen held the iron rod with a smile before his gourd, remarking that he had spent 500,000 spirit stones to bid for it and warning it not to disappoint him. The iron rod was suddenly sucked into the gourd as Yi Chen commanded it to go, watching with anticipation as it disappeared inside. As time passed without any significant reaction from the gourd, Yi Chen's expression turned doubtful. He shook the gourd and questioned whether that was all. Frustrated, he threw the gourd and expressed disbelief at having spent 500,000 spirit stones on it. Yi Chen then took out the black iron and black steel, putting on a bandana as he prepared to use them. He affirmed the materials were genuine and declared his intention to temper his red heaven sword. Settling into meditation, he controlled his true fire, which enveloped both the sword and the two materials. With a forceful shout, the blade of his red heaven sword began to glow, fusing with the black iron and white steel under the influence of his true fire. After examining the transformed blade, Yi Chen expressed satisfaction, noting the improvement and finally feeling he had achieved something worthwhile. The next morning, Bertu asked when Yi Chen had returned the day before, admitting he had thought Yi Chen had been assassinated. Yi Chen replied that private fights were prohibited during the auction, and that no matter how bold Wu Changqing was, he would not dare come looking for trouble there. Yi Chen then threw a pouch at Bertu, returning exactly 300,000 spirit stones. Bertu reacted with surprise, questioning how Yi Chen still possessed spirit stones. Yi Chen responded that he had picked them up. Bertu asked where he had picked them up, joking that he would go pick some up too. As they walked, Yi Chen mentioned Heaven Profound Sect. Bertu expressed disbelief that Yi Chen had picked them up at Heaven Profound Sect, then commented on how good it felt to be rich. Arriving inside the hidden dragon pavilion, Bertu grew angry as Yi Chen took food from one of Bertu's plates. Yi Chen warned Bertu to eat less or he would die from overeating. Bertu retorted that since Yi Chen had not paid for the food, he should not complain so much. At that moment, Elder Wu came into view. Yi Chen's expression cooled. If Wu Changqing dared to provoke him again, he would make the man bleed once more.